Chapter 922. Mo Luo was a four-winged angel. Even in the Western Heavens realm, he was a respected figure. In his own plane, he was a godlike existence. Therefore, he naturally did not care about a divine king like Lin Muyu. Buzz buzz buzz, the light sword in his hand was filled with energy. He slammed it towards Lin Muyu's Xianyuan sword. Bang! Not only did Lin Muyu's sword carry the power of the chaotic element of the common life, it also borrowed the power of the earth and the forest. A mere first strike actually forcefully shook off Mo Luo's light sword. Good! Tang Xiaoxi clapped and cheered. Don't be too happy yet. Mo Luo sneered. His body was surrounded by the scorching sun, evaporating the rain and dew in the forest. Suddenly, there was a magnificent scene of clouds rising. The corner of his mouth curled up. He said, "That attack just now, I only used 30% of my strength. Don't be complacent too early. You will die a horrible death." Lin Muyu did not speak. She suddenly moved quickly. She used falling star step. Stepping on meteors, she moved around Mo Luo at a speed that was hard to catch with the naked eye. Mo Luo could not help but take a deep breath. What a fast movement technique. He had to stay calm and not rely on his eyes to judge. He had to rely on his aura. Otherwise, it would be difficult to block Lin Muyu's next attack. But it was still too late. Bang! Stepping on the void, Lin Muyu's figure shrouded in the light of the Xianyuan sword bloomed in the night sky. Blood-red energy flew up and the two luminaries' demonic dance directly hit the opponent's back. Mo Luo could not dodge or even turn around. He could only swing his sword to block from behind. Boom! The power of the 7 planets clashed with the light elemental law divine power. This time, it was Lin Muyu who had the upper hand. Mo Luo took a few steps forward, looking rather disheveled. However, when he turned around, Lin Muyu disappeared again. Her aura was completely gone, as if she had merged with the entire forest. Above. Mo Luo hurriedly raised his head and held his sword horizontally. With an angry roar, he rose from the ground and shouted, "Blaze light cut." Amidst the buzzing sound, the celestial bodies of all living beings merged with the celestial bodies of the Xianyuan sword. When the power surged into the sword, Lin Muyu's confidence was boosted. The Xianyuan sword was indeed a divine weapon. The morality it contained had at least doubled the power of the third star. It then blasted down on Mo Luo's head, 3 luminaries' calamity. Violent sounds rang out incessantly, and the ground began to crack open. A tyrannical force swept out, uprooting the trees. As for the saplings, they were directly turned into powder. When the two swords collided, the power was in no way inferior to that of the magic crystal cannons. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi stood in place, unmoving. The strong wind blew against their divine walls, but it was unable to move them at all. As spectators, their strength was actually not inferior to the authorities. With the third sword, Mo Luo was once again at a disadvantage. After the blaze light cut was neutralized, the power of Lin Muyu's third star continued to penetrate into Mo Luo's divine walls. Furthermore, it was an overwhelming morality that Mo Luo hated very much. Although he was a god, Mo Luo had never cultivated his heart, but his physique. He hated this kind of hypocritical morality to the core. Lin Muyu was still moving quickly, looking for an opportunity to attack twice, for Luminary's demon god's cry. 5 luminaries 8 wasteland's destruction. Mo Luo was in an even more sorry state. He never thought that a dignified god emperor like himself would be repeatedly defeated by a god king. Even if his opponent had the disposition of a supreme being, it shouldn't be like this. Finally, Mo Luo noticed the sword in Lin Muyu's hand and asked, "Your sword, what exactly is its origin?" "You don't need to know its origin. You only need to know that this is my ancestor's sword." Ancestor? Mo Luo suddenly felt a burst of anger and roared, "Die, you arrogant brat." He finally used 100% of his divine power. Everything in the surrounding forest started to evaporate, and even the gravitational field started to spin. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi quietly stood in place, observing the power of the Western Heaven Realm's God Emperor. In the field, Lin Muyu also slowly flipped the Xian Yuan sword. The long sword hummed in response. It seemed that the Xian Yuan sword also hated Mo Luo, this vicious and evil god. This four-winged angel used his strength to bully the weak, and he was the only supreme being. He didn't cultivate as an immortal, but as a devil. Since he was a devil, then the Xian Yuan sword had the right to exterminate devils. Pa pa pa, streams of light blossomed on the Xian Yuan sword. The world spun and the universe reversed. Lin Muyu let out a low roar and activated the second strongest attack of the 7 stars, 6 stars heavenly tribulation. Boom! The huge ball of light expanded, tearing a huge hole in the ground. Waves of air rushed towards the surroundings. This time, Lin Muyu had used 100% of his divine power. Otherwise, it would be impossible to subdue this 71st heaven paradise four-winged angel. Ga. The four wings on Mo Luo's back were partially torn by the supreme divine power. His feathers fluttered in the air. His breathing was very rapid. This attack, even if he used all his strength, he couldn't gain the slightest bit of advantage from Lin Muyu. This 7 stars heavenly tribulation was powerful and overbearing. It was indeed not something that ordinary martial arts could compare to. Come, what other abilities do you have? Feel free to use them. All right. Lin Muyu's blood vessels churned from the shock. A trace of blood even flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He stretched out his hand and touched a drop of blood. Immediately, the blood evaporated into a small ball of blood mist on his fingertip. The golden supreme divine power quickly rushed in and fused with the blood mist. Then, it condensed into a large ball of blood-red light on the blade of the sword. Come! The most powerful attack was coming, blood refining the firmament. This was an attack that was different from the 7 stars heavenly tribulation. It drew on the power of the stars and the explosive power of the bloodline. Mo Luo's soul trembled slightly. He knew how powerful this attack was. He hurriedly raised his light sword. His body danced in the air, creating a golden light wall. Like a folded sharp blade, he attacked Lin Muyu. He roared, "Light all slash!" The Xianyuan sword suddenly shone brightly. Buzz, amidst the clanging sound of the sword, the blood refining the firmament broke through the opponent's light wall. Dang! A crisp sound rang out. Mo Luo's light sword was actually forcibly cut into 2 by the Xianyuan sword. Then, the blood refining the firmament fell, directly smashing Mo Luo's divine wall. As the Xianyuan sword slashed down, Mo Luo's body was split into 2. However, he didn't become a corpse. Instead, he directly evaporated under the power of the blood refining the firmament. In the air, a dazzling godhead was floating there, glowing with light. With the power of the Xianyuan sword, Lin Muyu actually killed a god emperor in just 7 moves. So powerful, Tang Xiaoxi opened her mouth wide. So powerful, Mu. Qin Yin had a faint smile on her lips. She knew Lin Muyu's power. With the power of the Xianyuan sword, this result was actually expected. Clatter. Lin Muyu grabbed the godhead and put it into her pouch. This way, together with Bailey Qin's godhead, they now had 2 godheads of god emperors. Moreover, Mo Luo's godhead was actually a heavenly Dao godhead. It was very good. At this time, the sound of hooves could be heard. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao came with light cavalry. They all looked at the forest that was already on fire, dumbfounded. What happened? What happened here? Su Jiantao asked. Wei Chou was also a god state expert, so his perception was stronger. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Your Highness. It seems that Your Highness has just killed a god state expert." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "We did not guess wrong. The ruler of Western Heaven Realm did indeed send another batch of angels to Shattered Cauldron World. However, most of them were intercepted and killed by the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. However, there were still some that slipped through the net. Although this Mo Luo is a god emperor, after being intercepted by the demon emperor, he lost at least 40% of his power. Otherwise, would not have been able to kill him so easily. Qin Yin asked, "Brother, are you worried?" How can I not be worried? If a few more God Emperor level 4 winged angels appear and we are not present, it will probably cause a series of disturbances. Tang Xiaoxi said, "We can only take one step at a time. Since everyone is awake, let's continue marching and reach the steel wall as soon as possible. There should be a bloody battle there." "Alright, pass down the order, continue marching, full speed." "Yes, Your Highness." After the sun rose, the fog dispersed rapidly. The water of the Rice River flowed slowly, and there were messy sounds amidst the gurgling water. The Tianji Empire's army on the east bank had finally gathered enough bamboo rafts and started to cross the river. Prepare for battle. Feng Jixing did not sleep the entire night and sat on the battlement in a daze. At this moment, he decisively gave a military order. He pressed his hand on the hilt of the Crimson Phoenix saber and said, "All magic crystal cannons, listen up. Aim at the place on the Rice River where there are the most people but there are no dragon knights guarding the area. Don't King waste all the magic crystal cannons on the Dragon Imperial Spiral." "Yes, Your Highness Prince Xian." Everyone laughed out loud. The enemy was at the gates, and Feng Jixing's vulgar words made everyone feel more relaxed. After all, many of them were new soldiers and had never participated in a battle before. Looking at the densely packed crowd, some of them were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. If they did not take some measures, they would not be able to fight this battle. In the distance, the densely packed bamboo raft started to cross the river. The magic crystal cannons on the city walls also started to fire. Boom! 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 Many mushroom clouds were set off in the distance. The prowess of the magic crystal cannons was very great, and huge waves that were several meters tall immediately rose on the Rice River, overturning many of the bamboo rafts that were protected by the Dragon Imperial Spiral. Not all of the Tianji Empire's soldiers knew how to swim, and there were many cries for help. Zhang Wei laughed out loud. There are so many people from the Tianji Empire. Will they never be able to finish all of them? Then let's continue. I want to see how many of them are worthy of death. Feng Jixing fell silent, his brows furrowed tightly. What's wrong, Your Highness Prince Xian? Scholar Ling asked. Feng Jixing looked at the army crossing the river on the Rice River and said, I'm worried about something. Oh, what is it? Luo Yu was also interested. Feng Jixing said, we've lost many of the magic crystal cannons in the hands of the Tianji Empire. And you see, when the steel wall was built, it was used to attack the demon race, and it was very close to the shore. That way, the demon race would be able to enter the shooting range of the white drill arrows when they reached the shore. But we neglected one thing, and that is that there were no magic crystal cannons at that time. Now, the magic crystal cannons are getting better and better, and their shooting range is as high as 1,000 meters. If the people on the other side can use the magic crystal cannons, then they can directly bombard our steel wall on the other side. As he said that, Feng Jixing sighed. As time goes on, the situation of the war will also change, and we have neglected this point. Luo Yu, Zhang Wei, Chu Chu, and the others' expressions changed drastically. It seemed that they finally understood the reason why Bai Minghuan hadn't launched the attack yet. He was waiting for the magic crystal cannons to be in position. What are you waiting for? Luo Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at everyone. All the Eagle Scouts, go out and find out about the enemy's situation. Once you find the magic crystal cannons, report back immediately. Chapter 923. In the morning, a rumbling sound came from the north. Thick smoke rose from the purple mushroom cloud. The ground was shaking slightly. The steel defense wall that was at least 100 meters long was razed to the ground after nearly 10 consecutive cannon blasts. I knew it. Feng Jixing clenched his teeth and shouted in a low voice, Zhang Wei, take some men and block the gap. We can't let the Tianji army break through our defense line so easily. Behind us are the defenseless states and prefectures of Tsangnan province. We can't let the Tianji army break through even if we all die here. Yes. Zhang Wei, who was riding on the horse, saluted to Feng Jixing with his long saber. Then, he led the cavalry and charged forward. Meanwhile, the Dragon Knight kept flying in the sky and released sword energy onto the city wall. The steel defense wall that was nearly 10 miles long had turned into a burning battlefield. Not far away, the Beeman King, Ice Palm, Fire Fist, and other godly state experts had already started fighting with the Dragon Knights. Explosions of flames and divine power continuously rang out in the sky. Below the city, the densely packed army of the Tianji Empire had already blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they charged towards the Dragon Knights. Ladders, hooks, and other weapons danced chaotically in the air. The scene was extremely chaotic. In such a chaotic battlefield, the one who could remain calm would be the final winner. Feng Jixing. A sharp voice came from the sky. Feng Jixing looked up and saw a beautiful girl holding a long spear. She was wearing a battle angel costume and had 4 black wings spread behind her. She had a disdainful look on her face. Her long spear was shining brightly. In the next moment, she dashed over like a sharp arrow, aiming at the city wall where Feng Jixing was standing. It's Duo La. Feng Jixing raised his 2 sabers and charged out of the city wall without saying anything. He waved his sabers and a fierce firestorm was stirred up. The saber energy was hidden in the storm and flew out invincibly. Dozens of soldiers of the Tianji army who were pushing ladders were turned into ashes immediately. Buzz! Amidst the sounds of collision, Dora's Tig's spear forcefully tore apart the energy field of the Sky Devourer. The surrounding time seemed to have come to a standstill, but Dora's figure accelerated quite a bit. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Feng Jixing and thrust his spear forward like the fangs of a venomous snake. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, Feng Jixing swept out the clear dragon blade in his left hand, and formed an endless wall of wind. Dang! It collided with Dugas' long spear. Suddenly, a tyrannical divine wave swept out, and caused Feng Jixing's blood to boil. He fell down with a muffled groan, and forcibly crashed into the city wall. He was battered and exhausted, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had already lost. Die! Duo La let out a delicate cry, and her figure shot forward like a bolt of lightning again. However, just when she was about 10 meters away from him, a silhouette flew over. It was Scholar Ling. He raised a wrist guard in his hand and shouted in a low voice, "Myriad world of frost." Swoosh, 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 heaven and earth were activated. This was a divine book, and a hexagonal frost wall appeared in front of her. Then, more frost walls exploded on top of the wall, and they surged forward like a chain array. Duola had no choice but to hold her spear and retreat. The pitiful hundreds of Tianji army soldiers below her were all frozen into ice cubes. They had already died in battle, and it was a tragic sight to behold. Duola looked at the chain of explosions, and she couldn't help but gasp. At this moment, an old man in a white robe descended from the sky. He raised his hand slightly, and it seemed as if he was drawing the power of all the living beings in the surrounding forest. The green leaves danced wildly and condensed into a shield. Energy enshrouded the shield, and even the river behind him became even more turbulent. It was Chu Chu. He was the only one who had comprehended the laws of nature to this extent. Scholar Ling raised another divine book in his hand, and his eyes were filled with mockery. He smiled and said, "Duola, you were fortunate enough to receive the inheritance of the black-winged battle angel. Why don't you cherish your life? Your Highness Feng Jixing, use your dimensional blade. I want to see if Duola can continue to act fierce if the three of us work together." All right. Feng Jixing still wanted to use Duo La's power to intimidate others. He held his two blades horizontally, and electric currents surged around him. Gusts of dimensional wind appeared. Although Feng Jixing's divine power was much weaker than Duo La's, unknown power would always create a psychological pressure on people. Duo La looked coldly at Chu Chu, and then at Scholar Ling. What shocked her even more was that not far away, a huge creature was tearing apart a dragon knight and his dragon in the air, roaring incessantly. It was the Beeman King. The Beeman King's strength was comparable to an expert who had just entered the God Emperor realm. This was no joke. Although Duola was proud and arrogant, she definitely didn't have the confidence to challenge so many people with just her four-winged strength. Since when did the Shattered Cauldron realm have so many experts? She muttered to herself, and disappeared with the dig spear. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in the chariot formation 3 miles away. The war drums thundered. Bai Minghuan, Gong Shangming, Lin Tongtian, and the rest were on the main chariot, watching the battle from afar. Miss Duola, how is the battle? Bai Minghuan asked respectfully with a smile. Duola said, other than Feng Jixing, there are a few monsters that are ridiculously strong. Among them, there is a huge beast with very strong spirit energy. I'm afraid that even the dig spear might not be able to defeat it. Other than that, there is another person who took out a very powerful heavenly book. I don't know where it came from, but it is very powerful. Marshall should have seen it too. Yes. Bai Minghuan said, that person is Scholar Ling, a genius who specializes in all kinds of heavenly books. Unfortunately, he can't be used by me, and is just a dog of Lin Muyu. As for that monster, it is the Beeman King, one of the White Leaf Four Masters. Although it is an idiot, it is born with great strength, and cannot be underestimated. Miss Duola, you don't need to be anxious. We just need to sit and watch. Their steel wall has already been destroyed by us by hundreds of meters. As long as our brave warriors break through their defense line, they will collapse on their own. Duola nodded, but then asked, Marshal, don't you want to go to the battlefield yourself and kill Feng Jixing with your own hands? One Feng Jixing's life or death is not enough to change the overall situation. There is no need to rush. Bai Minghuan narrowed his eyes and said, moreover, our scouts have reported that Lin Muyu, Xin, Tang Xiaoxi, and Su Jiantao have already led 60,000 soldiers into Cangnan province. They will arrive at the battlefield in half a day at most. It is better not to act rashly. Duola suddenly laughed. She already knew that on the South Mountain battlefield, famous warriors like Bailey Qin and Han Shu had all died. Although Bai Minghuan was a god emperor, he was just a warrior who had just entered the god emperor realm. Compared to Bailey Qin, who was close to the peak of the 90 realm, how could Bai Minghuan not be afraid? After all, cultivation was for longevity and glory. Bai Minghuan did not want to die so early. Instead of going to the battlefield himself, it was better to exchange the lives of ants for a victory. The difference between a god and a human was that they understood the power of the god realm. But there was one thing that was the power of a god would be used up. Bai Minghuan only wanted to exchange the lives of the Tianji army for the lives of a god. Even 10,000 people for one god was worth it. At this moment, a dragon knight descended from the sky and said respectfully, Marshal, someone from Winterfrost City wants to see you. From Winterfrost City? Who is it? He claims to be an angel from the Western Heaven realm. Oh. Bai Minghuan frowned. Ask him to come. Yes. The soldiers with shields in their hands scattered, and a man came riding over on a horse. He was wearing a tattered robe, and his face was covered with scars that looked like he had been burned. He jumped off the horse and walked onto the chariot step by step with a cold look in his eyes. He stopped in front of Bai Minghuan, his face expressionless. How dare you? A dragon knight scolded. Who are you? Why aren't you bowing to the marshal? Bai Minghuan raised his hand to stop him. Wait. He looked at the newcomer and smiled. Who are you? Please show your identity. Me? The newcomer smiled arrogantly and said, Since you want to know, I'll do as you wish. Open your eyes and see who I am. As he spoke, he let out a low roar, and his body instantly shot into the sky like a god that had descended into the world. Moreover, 2 pairs of pure white wings of light unfolded behind him. Shockingly, he was a 4-winged radiant angel. Radiant angels were very respected even in the Western Heaven realm. For example, high-level gods like Li Fei and Merlin who were at least level 90 Grotto Heavens were all radiant angels. A powerful force field surrounded them. Bai Minghuan was instantly covered in sweat. His heart was filled with respect, and he could not help but kneel on one knee. Lower world, Bai Minghuan greets Lord Radiant Angel. The Radiant Angel smiled in satisfaction and retracted his aura. My name is Zai, 90 Grotto Heavens, Radiant Angel under Ruler Claude. I'm also the only Radiant Angel in this exile mission. Unfortunately, we fell into the trap of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. Most of the angels have fallen, and I don't know how many are still alive. So it's Lord Zai, Radiant Angel. My apologies. Bai Minghuan's face was ashen as he lowered his head. A Radiant Angel was enough to control dozens of dimensions. Bai Minghuan, a marshal, was really nothing in front of Zai. Zai's gaze fell on Dora, Luo Fei, and the other battle angels nearby. Looking at the Tig spear, Zai said lightly, "You're Dora?" "Yes, Lord Radiant Angel." Dora's arrogance was much more restrained. After all, Zai's identity was too noble. Zai sneered. "What a bunch of trash. Lord Ruler sent 10 of you to Shattered Cauldron Realm, but you still haven't made any progress after so long. How disappointing." Dora frowned. "Lord, there's a reason for this. It's only because Sheen betrayed us and brought Terrelin, Lake, and the other battle angels to the enemy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had so little success so far." "Sheen betrayed us?" Zai was shocked. "She's Blazing Angel Xian's sister. However, she has another identity. She is Empress Qin Yin of the Shattered Cauldron Realm. She was reborn after the 6 paths of reincarnation. She deceived Lady Xian, deceived the ruler, and deceived everyone. Humph, this despicable woman." Zai clenched his fists. "I'll kill her myself." Chapter 924. Bai Minghuan. Zai suddenly turned and looked at the general. Bai Minghuan hurriedly bowed. "Your subordinate is here, Lord Zai. Which country do you belong to?" "The Tianji Empire." "How many people do you have now?" "Nearly 300,000. "How many people do they have?" "About, less than 200,000. "Humph." Zai swung his sleeves and said with a livid face, "What a piece of trash. Didn't you claim that the Sky Pole continent is the strongest lower realm? You can't even take down a broken cauldron realm, not to mention that you have more soldiers. You're such a disappointment. If you can't be the general, I think we should replace you." Bai Minghuan's face was pale. "Lord Zai, please listen to me. My army's attacks are getting fiercer and fiercer. In less than a day, we will break through this damn steel wall." "Steel wall?" "Yes." Bai Minghuan pointed at the chaotic battlefield in the west. "Lord Zai, please look. The Broken Cauldron Realm has built a steel defense line along the river. They call it the Steel Wall. It's 20 meters tall, and ordinary ladders and hooks can't compare to it. That's why we can't do anything. But now that we have the magic crystal cannons, this steel wall is nothing." Zai looked at him coldly, making Bai Minghuan's hair stand on end. "Lord Zai, what's wrong?" "Humph." Zai sneered, "I can see that you have the cultivation of a god emperor, but you're actually so weak. How can a mere mortal realm's iron wall stop you?" "Lord Zai, get out of my way." Zai looked at him coldly. "I'll help you flatten this steel wall. If you can't break through the Broken Cauldron Realm's defense line in one day, then kill yourself." "Lord, you..." Before Bai Minghuan could finish, Zai had already regrown his 4 wings and flew towards the steel wall. He stood on the river and took out his sword, pointing it at the wall. Zai gave a devilish smile and laughed. "Ants building, break." Buzz. Rays of light that soared into the sky gathered together. In the blink of an eye, a huge wheel appeared beneath Midnight's feet. It was actually a divine wheel. That's right, the unique ability of an emperor god with 90 levels of Grotto Heaven Great Circle, Divine Wheel. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others felt a strong sense of oppression. Looking from afar, the person on the river had already slashed out with his sword. His divine will whizzed over. Be careful. Without another word, Feng Jixing also struck out with a dimensional storm. However, it was clear that he was unable to contend against a divine wheel. Chu Chu bellowed and raised his hand to summon his strongest power. The trees on the ground were uprooted and formed a natural barrier. Scholar Ling was anxious. He took out a heavenly book and shouted, "Don't resist. You can't. Follow me and move." The sky suddenly lit up, and the heavenly book of the law of space brought everyone away from this section of the city wall. After moving about 500 meters away, everyone looked back and saw an extremely tragic scene. The steel wall that was nearly 300 meters long collapsed in an instant and was directly razed to the ground by the opponent's spirit wheel. Countless imperial soldiers on the city wall and inside the city had already been turned into flesh and blood, and most of them had been turned into ashes. It's a divine wheel. Scholar Ling frowned. Chu Chu remained silent. Feng Jixing gritted his teeth and said, "Damn the Western Heaven realm. Did they send someone again?" Scholar Ling said, "To be able to use a divine wheel, it must be at least a great perfection god emperor at the 90th Grotto Heaven stage. This is really troublesome. The steel wall most likely can't hold on anymore." "No, we must hold on." Feng Jixing's eyes were bloodshot. "I can't let Her Highness Yin and you see us abandoning the Empire's last line of defense. Even if I die here, I won't allow it." "Su Hao, how often can you use your divine wheel?" "It depends on your cultivation. Ordinary great perfection god emperors can use their divine will once every 4 hours. If they use it too frequently, their cultivation will be damaged." 4 hours. That's enough. Feng Jixing carried his blades and flew up. He stood in the air above the broken city wall and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Block the gap and resist them. Magic crystal cannons, magic crystal crossbows, arrow boxes. Don't save ammunition for me. Fire. Attack." The resistance on the city wall became more intense. Luo Yu led the infantry and cavalry to form a human wall around the broken city wall. They fought with the flowing spirit army and the god E army who were trying to break into the defensive line. Above the river, Zai frowned. The Qin army's tenacity was beyond his imagination. Beside him, the 3 battle angels, Duola, Luo Fei, and Duoli, flew over. Duola smiled and said, "Sir Zai, the Qin army's courage is commendable. It's a pity that they are too weak. Thanks to Sir Zai's attack, I think, our army will be able to break through their defensive lines soon." Zai snorted and did not say anything. He was a strange person. His arrogance was even higher than Duola's. 20 miles away, the 60,000 soldiers entered the unicorn forest. Returning to the old land made everyone feel a myriad of emotions. Qin Yin closed her eyes. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She muttered, "The battle is very intense. The steel protective wall has already been damaged in many places." Her cultivation was very high. Ever since she obtained the eyes of blazing light, she had relied on her spiritual perception. Hence, her spiritual perception was much more sensitive than others of the same cultivation. Just from the tremors and auras coming from the ground, she could basically determine the situation of the battlefield. Lin Muyu gently stroked Takshu's mane, telling her not to be so anxious. They were indeed getting closer and closer to the battlefield. Looking into the distance, they could even see the rising smoke in the sky. That was the masterpiece of the magic crystal cannons. "Let's hope they can withstand it," Jin Yifan said. At that moment, Su Jiantao galloped over on his horse. He said respectfully, "Your Highnesses, we just received news from our scouts. Bai Minghuan's 300,000 soldiers are almost all out. There are only about 20,000 soldiers and 50,000 backup soldiers left behind. These backup soldiers are basically the surrendered soldiers or citizens of the empire. They don't have much fighting power. You want to raid the food camp? Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Yes. Su Jiantao said, food is the foundation of an army. An army of 300,000 soldiers consumes at least 1 million kilograms of food every day, and at least 500,000 kilograms of vegetables. The food of the Tianji Empire is basically looted from Winter Frost City and the nearby cities, so it won't be much. As long as we burn their food, they won't be able to fight for long. Once they have the intention to retreat, our army can pursue them. Lin Muyu smiled. Su Jiantao seemed to have matured into a true general who could take charge of an area by himself. Which famous general did not plan for their rations all day long? That was a basic quality of life. Tell me, how are you going to raid them? Su Jiantao said, we can't send too many people. 5,000 light cavalrymen will be enough. We'll split up from here and bring along some kindling. We'll rely on the warhorses to swim across the river. However, we must restrain the enemy on the main battlefield. Otherwise, these 5,000 people will be easily hunted down by the dragon knights or godly state experts. Don't worry. Lin Muyu raised her eyebrows and said, Xiao Yin, Xiao Shi, and I will go to the main battlefield to keep the enemy busy. You and Wei Chou will lead 5,000 light cavalries there. Listen to my orders. Don't come back. After burning their granaries, immediately head east and burn all their food teams and supplies. It will take at least 5 days to get to Winter Frost City from here. Since Bai Minghuan dares to come, I will starve his 100,000 men to death. As she said that, Lin Muyu pulled out a token arrow from a guard's hand and said, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, listen to my orders. I will allow you two to act according to the situation. Once you enter the east of the river, I will not give you any orders anymore. You two can act on your own and cause as much damage as you can to their rear. Don't worry about anything. In this battle, not only will I crush the Tianji Empire on the river, I will also make them suffer heavy casualties on their way back from Cangnan Province to Lingdong Province. Yes, Your Highness. The two generals knelt down together. After receiving the token arrow, they immediately chose their men and left. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu looked into the distance and said, speed up the march. The main battlefield needs our strength. Also, where is Xiling's secret weapon? In the middle of the army, led by dozens of wild warriors. Tang Xiaoxi smiled and said, that's good, although the secret weapon might not be of real use, it could at least deter the celestial pole continent, right? In the afternoon, the 50,000 men under Lin Muyu finally reached the steel wall. Looking from afar, the steel wall had already collapsed for a long time, and the two sides were engaged in a close combat under the wall. Roar, 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 among the rubble, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry were very ear-piercing. After tearing apart a group of imperial soldiers, they immediately rushed toward the back of the unicorn forest. That was the camp for the wounded soldiers, and it was also the temporary location of the spiritual medicine department where Chu Yao was. Lin Muyu immediately pulled out the Xianyuan sword and shouted, kill them. Don't let them get close to the camp for the wounded soldiers. Duke Fan, and Lien, you two immediately lead the main force to reinforce Big Brother Feng Jixing. Amidst the sound of hooves, Lin Muyu led a group of elite cavalrymen and rushed over. The Xianyuan sword was very sharp, and it emitted many sword energies. In the blink of an eye, she killed a group of tiger leopard cavalry single-handedly. By the time Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi arrived with the banished army, the army of nearly 3,000 tiger leopard cavalry had already fallen apart. Kill them. In the distance, another group of Tianji army broke through the defensive line and rushed over. There were over 10,000 cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen, and they rushed over majestically. Xiao Yin. Lin Muyu said in a low voice, it's time to use your power. Qin Yin suddenly left her original position and flew into the sky in the next moment. She opened the eyes of flaming dawn, and the enemies on the ground were instantly set ablaze. Those cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen didn't dare to look directly at the eyes of flaming dawn. They were dumbfounded as if their souls had been electrocuted. Dozens of seconds later, the heavy cavalrymen of the Longdan army camp swept across the battlefield like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others saw the scene in the distance. Feng Jixing couldn't help but tremble with excitement. He laughed and said, "Brothers, Her Highness the Empress is back. Her Highness Yin is back. She is fighting side by side with us." Everyone raised their weapons and shouted. Their morale was instantly raised. Chapter 925. The steel wall continued to collapse under the roar of the magic crystal cannons. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, the more than 50,000 people brought back by Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had all gone to block the gap. Meanwhile, the hundreds of thousands of people led by Feng Jixing, Qin Xiaoli, Qin Yan and others were also fighting with the enemy in the city. The entire defense line of the steel wall was no longer organized. It was completely like a pot of boiling soup. The only order was probably the thousands of people personally led by Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu. Under Feng Jixing's order, nearly 10 different-sized Jianghu battle formations were gathered at the gap of the city to resist the attack of the Tianji Empire's army. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu led thousands of iron hooves to attack the enemy who crossed the steel wall wantonly like a sharp knife. They strangled the powerful enemies who were besieging the city from inside and outside. In the sky, Qin Yin held the star's sword and spread her wings behind her. She led the 3 battle angels, Terralin, Lake and Zhou Shimin, to kill the dragon knights of the Tianji Empire. In the blink of an eye, at least 7 to 8 dragon knights were killed by the eyes of blazing dawn. In addition to the roaring sound of the machines behind them, 2 chariots followed the footsteps of Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi under the protection of the army of the Land of Exile. They launched artillery attacks at the shield formation of the Tianji Empire in the distance. Swoosh! The sound of the explosion seemed to have come from underground, and the low rumble was deafening in the blink of an eye. It was the particle cannon, the only high-tech cannon in the banished land that had been preserved in perfect condition. Unfortunately, this was the only one left, otherwise it would have been of great use. "Everyone, get on the city wall and shoot at your targets." A leader shouted, "We have pledged allegiance to the Dark Moon Queen. It's time to bleed for the Queen." In the blink of an eye, hundreds of experts from the Land of Exile rushed up the city wall with origin guns and sniper rifles in hand. They had all changed into the armor of the Qin Empire, but their weapons were different. The soldiers on the city wall were all shocked. They gave way and allowed these freaks to help defend the city wall. Soon, gunshots rang out one after another from the city wall. The experts from the Land of Exile only aimed at the generals of the Tianji Empire who were commanding the attack. They even shot the Kiliarchs in captaincy who were 700 to 800 meters away. In the blink of an eye, the pressure on the defensive line within several hundred meters had collapsed. The Tianji army who had lost their commanders were like headless flies. They were captured and killed one by Feng Jixing's net. Boom! With another 2 loud explosions, the wall between the 2 gaps was also razed to the ground by the magic crystal cannons. The imperial soldiers on the city wall were almost vaporized by the power of the magic crystal cannons. It was too horrible to look at. In this way, there was a gap as long as 1,000 meters in the steel wall. It was a bit scary. In the distance, the bugle sounded. It was the signal of the Tianji Empire to attack. Countless beast cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen swam across the water on their mounts. Dozens of dragon knights flew in the air to cover them. In the blink of an eye, they formed a battle formation of at least 50,000 people. This was also the most powerful attack the Tianji Empire could gather in the chaos. Charge! A general of the Divine Cloth Army who had lost an arm roared loudly. The army surged forward like a tide, constantly attacking the Jianghu battle formation that Feng Jixing had set up. Hence, in less than 10 minutes, it was like a tsunami crashing against a low dam. After all, the Jianghu battle formation was formed by manpower. How could a battle formation of 2,000 people block 50,000 people? When the Jianghu battle formation was completely destroyed, it meant that the biggest gap in the steel wall was also lost. Bastard! Feng Jixing descended from the sky with his dual blades. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He consecutively slashed out dozens of times, causing the cyclone to expand. There were no living people within dozens of meters of him, but it still couldn't stop the enemy's charge. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had used up a lot of his divine power. He shouted, "Ah, they're about to break through the defense line." In the distance, Lin Muyu waved the Xian Yuan sword and came over with thousands of troops. She said, "I know. Use the magic crystal crossbows and the tomes of heaven to kill them. They are all used up. The shells of the magic crystal cannons are almost used up." Damn, Lin Muyu complained secretly. She never thought that the Qin Empire would run out of supplies after only half a day of the enemy's general attack. Now, they could only rely on manpower. As long as they blocked the gap and relied on the long-range sniping of the troops from the exile land brought by Qin Yin, they could defeat the main force of the Tianji Empire. After all, they were on an expedition. If they couldn't take down the enemy after a long time, the morale of the army would be in chaos. Lin Muyu's voice was deep. While leading the cavalry of the Longdan army camp to charge, he concentrated his divine power into his voice line and shouted in a low voice, "All soldiers of the Empire who can still move, take your weapons and join me, Lin Muyu's battle formation. Let's charge together. Even if we die on the battlefield, we will never be bullied again." The appeal of his roar was so strong that Lin Muyu's reputation in the imperial army could be said to be like the sun at high noon. It had even surpassed Feng Jixing's. Lin Muyu was the real king in the hearts of the soldiers of the empire. What an honor it was to follow the Qin Emperor Lin Muyu to charge and break through enemy lines. Even if they died, were defeated, or ended up disabled, at least their lives would not be in vain. At least when they talked to their grandchildren in old age, they could proudly say that they had once followed the imperial martial god to charge and break through enemy lines. Therefore, the defeated, injured, and disordered soldiers of the empire picked up their weapons one after another. They looked for war horses and shields to arm themselves. Then, like a trickle of water, they gathered around the Longdan army camp. Even many wounded soldiers in the wounded barracks had already picked up their spears and jumped on their horses to join the battle. More and more people gathered, and in the blink of an eye, they had gathered into a battle formation of nearly 50,000 people and rushed straight to the enemy. As they got closer and closer to the enemy, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry continued. Lin Muyu knew that the enemy in front of him was one of the most elite armies of the Tianji Empire. It was a gathering of the best of the Shini army and the Liuji army. Buzz, the Xianyuan sword, the divine path sword, was stained with a lot of blood, but now it was like a holy sword fighting for freedom and dignity. The clanging sound was endless, and as Lin Muyu concentrated his divine power, it shone brightly. As he waved it, he directly struck a tyrannical chaos of the common people, sweeping the turf and soil towards the enemy. For a moment, the enemy was badly mutilated, and people and horses were thrown off their feet. Nature of nature. After the chaos of the common people, Lin Muyu immediately raised his left arm and raised his hand to strike the elephant wool shuttle. With a swoosh, the bottom of the elephant wool cut through the ground and rushed forward, directly creating a vacuum in the battle formation of the tiger leopard cavalry. All the enemies along the way were turned into corpses. At this moment, Lin Muyu was like a killing god in the mortal world. Acatosaurus, come out and help the battle. Along with the roar, the little dragon shook its head and appeared. As soon as it appeared, it sprinkled a dragon's breath in the battle formation, burning a group of beast cavalry to death. Then, it raised its neck and roared. The majesty of the divine dragon was displayed, and the group of tiger leopard cavalry almost stopped in their tracks. The tiger leopard cavalry was just the king of the jungle, but the little apple was the noble king of all beasts. The sound of collisions did not stop. In the blink of an eye, the tens of thousands of people led by Lin Muyu clashed with the enemy's 50,000 people. Dust flew everywhere. When two sides met on a narrow path, the brave would win. Whoever was the first to retreat would be the loser. Both sides wanted to be the winner, so this achievement of 1,000 years would inevitably be paved with corpses and lives. Above the city, Feng Jixing wielded his twin sabers with an ashen face. He strode in front of a dozen magic crystal cannons and shouted in a low voice, "Why aren't you firing? What are you waiting for?" Achillearcha's face was covered in blood and sweat. He cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, the cannons are too hot. They need at least 30 minutes to cool down. Otherwise, the temperature will be enough to directly detonate the magic crystal cannons. Moreover, we only have 3 magic crystal cannons left. We are truly powerless. Your Highness, please investigate. This is a battlefield. Don't use such cowardly words to explain to me." Feng Jixing was indeed swift and decisive. He shouted to the people behind him, "Stargazer, supply the magic crystal cannons you brought with you to them. I will cool down these magic crystal cannons." "Yes, Your Highness." Stargazer nodded. Zhang Wei quickly raised his hand and brought out the last magic crystal cannons in the Imperial Army's inventory. Feng Jixing carried the azure dragon saber and came to the side of the magic crystal cannons. He roared in a low voice and circulated the law of ice to cool down the cannons. However, he also knew that he couldn't cool them down too quickly. Otherwise, the steel of the magic crystal cannons might not be able to withstand such a degree of cold and hot exchange. After nearly a minute, the magic crystal cannons were no longer burning hot. Feng Jixing stretched out his hand and pointed at the gap in the steel wall on the right. He said, "Look, they are all people from the Tianji Empire. Her Highness Yin and Princess Xi have all escaped from the Dragon Knights. Immediately open fire with all your might. Kill as many people as you can." "Yes." The cannons roared. More than a dozen mushroom clouds rose from the gap in the steel wall that was nearly a kilometer long. Shock waves swept out in all directions. Without the protection of the Dragon Imperial Battle Ring, the Tianji Empire's army was only made of flesh and blood. They were blown to pieces and it was a tragic sight. Again, continuous cannons. Feng Jixing said loudly, "Her Highness Yu is fighting a bloody battle at the bottom of the city. All you can do is to reduce the pressure. This is a battle for your dignity as artillerymen." Within 5 minutes, 3 consecutive cannons were already the limit that the magic crystal cannons could withstand. At the same time, the Imperial Army's last stock of cannons was almost used up. At this moment, Qin Yin's voice sounded in Feng Jixing's ears. "General Feng, be careful. Someone is coming." In the distance, a group of God State warriors flew straight over. At the front was a middle-aged man with 2 pairs of holy wings on his back. The sharp sword in his hand shone brightly. Behind him were Bai Minghuan, Dora, Lin Tongtian, Luo Fei, and the others. Finally, the Tianji Empire's strongest force was going to be mobilized. Feng Jixing couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn it, is that the Radiant Angel Midnight? Terrelin looked into the distance in disbelief. "That's me, Terrelin." Midnight actually heard Terrelin's words from afar. With an indifferent expression on his face, he said, "Terrelin, you are the successor of the Radiant clan. Don't be stubborn. Do you know that you are helping our enemy? Sheen is my friend." Terrelin slowly pulled out her sharp sword and said, "There is nothing wrong with fighting for a friend." Midnight shouted coldly in a low voice, "In that case, I will no longer care about my friendship with your father. I will help the Western Heaven Realm to clean up the mess." The golden light soared into the sky, and an invisible force spread out, causing everyone to be shocked. "It's a spirit wheel." Lake's voice was trembling. After all, he was only a god king. In the face of such a powerful spirit wheel, the fear came from the bottom of his heart and couldn't be suppressed. Chapter 926. "Let me do it." Qin Yin slowly opened her arms, and suddenly, a total of 13 golden god-binding chains emerged from her body. They encircled her body like elegant ribbons. The flames in the eyes of the blazing dawn flickered and fused with the god-binding chains. Then, a dazzling ice crystal was formed in front of her. It was a huge dragon crystal. Qin Yin activated almost all the power of the Law of Light's defensive martial technique. She knew that if she couldn't block this attack, everyone would die. She would die. Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, Terlin, Lake, and the others would all die. No one could escape from this joke of fate. Wasn't it a joke for a king god to challenge a consummate realm god emperor? Very good. Zai sneered. Shi Yan's sister is indeed extraordinary. Then, I will release you from purgatory today. Xin, your mistake is that you shouldn't be Qin Yin. Boom. The huge spirit will covered the sky and the earth. It had the momentum to destroy everything. In terms of destructive power and range of power, Zai's spirit will couldn't be compared to the spirit will Lin Muyu used before. It was stronger, bigger, and more powerful. Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her face turned pale. The moment the spirit will collided with the celestial dragon crystal, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She felt a chill in her heart. She realized that the celestial dragon crystal couldn't block the spirit will at all. Although her light divine power was the purest divine power, she was only a king god after all. Boom! The celestial dragon crystal began to collapse. However, at least half of the spirit wheel's power remained. Even if this half of the divine power swept across the entire city wall, Tang Xiaoxi, Terlin, and the others would be fatally injured. Qin Yin didn't hesitate anymore. With a shout, her body was bathed in flames. She rushed into the spirit wheel with the star's sword in her hand. Xiao Yin. Tang Xiaoxi screamed hysterically. Xin. Terlin stood there in a daze, unable to do anything. However, the movement of the divine will slowed down because of Qin Yin's power. The next moment, the divine will suddenly surged with countless sword lights. Terlin's beautiful eyes widened. It's Lady Shi Yan's 7 strikes. Split, that's right, Qin Yin exerted all her strength to execute the 7 slashes that Shi Yan had taught her. First slash, split. Sparks flew everywhere, and his divine will trembled slightly. Second slash, judgment. Golden light tore through the sky. His divine will was on the verge of collapse. The third slash, annihilation. The power of the divine will was finally exhausted. Countless beams of sword light pierced through the edges of the divine wheel and completely destroyed this life-threatening wheel. However, it also brought with it a golden rain of blood. When Qin Yin was ejected from the divine wheel, she was already covered in wounds. Xiao Yin. Tang Xiaoxi was the fastest. She shot out like lightning and hugged Qin Yin in the air. However, she saw that Qin Yin's face was frighteningly pale. The divine wall around her had already been swallowed and destroyed by the power of the divine wheel. Cuts appeared on her fair skin. If it wasn't for her profound cultivation, she would have been obliterated by the divine wheel. Xiao Shi, be careful. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand and forcibly used her grain's god power to slide down the city wall with Tang Xiaoxi. However, her grip became tighter and tighter, not letting Tang Xiaoxi go out. The opponent was too strong. Qin Yin's action was no different from not wanting Tang Xiaoxi to be in danger. However, in the air, Zai, Dora, Bai Minghuan, and the others still came. Zai had only used up 30% of his divine power when he used the divine wheel, so he still had his combat ability. Dora spread her 4 wings behind her. Holding the Tig spear, she smiled and said, Tang Xiaoxi, do you want to fight me again? Xiao Shi, no. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand tightly. However, she was shocked to find that Tang Xiaoxi's appearance was changing. She had already entered the 9-tailed transformation, and her beautiful face had become even more bewitching. It was not just the 9-tailed transformation, but the second stage of the transformation, the demon god transformation. Tang Xiaoxi's jade-like palm instantly slipped out of Qin Yin's hand. She smiled gently and said, Xiao Yin, everyone is fighting with their lives on the line. How can I hide in the back alone? You should quickly rest and recover your strength. If I can't beat them, I still have to rely on you. As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky. She fought with Dora, and the flames surged continuously. The two of them were evenly matched, and the winner would not be decided in a short period of time. However, Zai held his light sword and stood proudly in the air. He said, "Does this mean that I have no opponents?" In your dreams. A handsome figure instantly appeared in front of him. It was Scholar Ling. Soon, the other three figures gathered together. Ice Palm, Fire Fist, and Behemoth King had all arrived. Su Hao gently waved the paper fan in his hand and said with a smile, "Zai, you are the radiant angel of the heaven realm. We, the 4 peerless white leaves of the mortal realm, are fighting you 4 against 1. It's not like we are bullying you, right?" Zai couldn't help but laugh out loud. "The few of you are the 4 peerless white leaves that Lin Muyu relies heavily on?" "That's right. Come, I also want to see how strong the people left behind by the former king of gods Fuxi of East Heaven are." Roar. Behemoth King didn't say anything. He charged over with a furious roar and punched Zai's head 3 times consecutively, forcing Zai to retreat continuously. He didn't even have time to prepare himself. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Flames and frost attacked from both sides. Their power was extremely vigorous and domineering, making it difficult for Zai to endure. After all, he was fighting 1 against 4. Moreover, he was already injured when he pierced through the flame knot of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. He had just used up 30% of his power to condense the divine wheel. Even though his power was far above any of the 4 peerless white leaves, he indeed felt that he couldn't split himself into 2 in a short period of time. Luo Fei. Lake slowly rose into the air. The battle angel wings on his back spread open and a sword of light condensed in his hand. He said, "We didn't have a clear winner in the chosen god trial. Why don't we have a showdown this time? You should have thought that you would die a horrible death when you followed that poisonous woman Duo La." Luo Fei's expression was solemn as he raised his shield. He knew how powerful Lake was. The martial arts of the Dark Light family had its own lineage. The laws of light contained the power of darkness. Although they were despised by the gods of the Western Heaven realm, no one dared to underestimate the Dark Light family. In the second round of the chosen god trial, Lake was 3rd while Luo Fei was 4th. The two were originally evenly matched. "Come, Lake, let me see the power of the Dark Light family." "As you wish." Lake roared angrily. His long sword struck Luo Fei's shield with the power of dark light. It was indeed tyrannical. The two of them turned into a ball of flames and fell from the sky. They fell directly into the Paddy River. The river water surged and swirled. Rays of light shone on the surface of the river. The battle under the water was obviously extraordinary. Chu Chu, Feng Jixing, and Ouyang Yan looked at each other. This battle was about to become a battle of gods. Bai Minghuan and Lin Tongtian looked at each other and smiled. Bai Minghuan said, "Lord Dragon Knight Lin Tongtian, it's time for us to go. Send out all the Dragon Knights. In this battle, we must kill Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Feng Jixing. We must destroy the Qin Empire." "Yes, Marshal." Dozens of dragon knights quickly gathered in the sky and rushed toward the city wall with Bai Minghuan and Lin Tongtian. Qin Yin suddenly looked up. Her flaming eyes were filled with cold light. Her star's sword was still trembling. She stepped on the bricks of the city wall and turned into a beam of light that shot toward Bai Minghuan. Even though she was injured in the spirit wheel, she still chose Bai Minghuan as her opponent. Ouyang Yan, Feng Jixing, and Chu Chu flew up one after another and fought with Lin Tongtian and the other dragon knights. Once the battle of gods began, the whole battlefield became even more chaotic. On the ground, it was a battle of mortals, while in the sky, it became a battle of gods. But what was amazing was that the power of both sides was balanced, and the only one who could break this balance was naturally Lin Muyu. While leading the charge, he paid attention to the fight in the sky. The battle between Tang Xiaoxi and Dora could not be decided in a short time, but it was obvious that Tang Xiaoxi's second form was very harmful to her body, and she could not fight for long. And Qin Yin was seriously injured and would not be a match for Bai Minghuan. So the balance of this battle was on Bai Minghuan's side. As long as Bai Minghuan was defeated, the morale of the Tianji Empire would naturally be disturbed. Either they did not attack, or if they attacked, they had to defeat the enemy in one blow. A few minutes later, Lin Muyu suddenly disappeared from the battle horse, and the one leading the charge was the masterless treading in snow warhorse. In the sky, the Xianyuan sword's light suddenly grew brighter. Bai Minghuan, who was fighting with Qin Yin, suddenly felt a chill around him. Even the four-dimensional space was completely blocked, and his body's movement speed became slower. It's here. Bai Minghuan sensed the approaching danger and hurriedly dodged. He saw the Xianyuan sword wrapped in frost fall right on the tip of his nose, and with a crack, it cut off half of the heart protection mirror on his chest. Lin Muyu. Bai Minghuan was furious. Lin Muyu's sword missed, and her body glided in the wind. She looked down at Bai Minghuan, sneered, and growled, "Freeze." The air froze instantly. This was a higher level of the snow ice. Bai Minghuan was caught off guard, and his body could not move at all. His whole body was frozen into a huge block of ice in the air. Lin Muyu pointed the Xianyuan sword at Bai Minghuan and growled, "Die." The blade shone with starlight, and the power of the seventh star roared out. Suddenly, the power of thousands of stars gathered in the air and bombarded Bai Minghuan, washing him in blood in the wind. At the same time, the huge star power fell at a 45-degree angle toward Daojiang, where the divine cloth army was densely packed. Boom, 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 the earth rumbled, and almost everyone looked in Lin Muyu's direction. The seven glorious stars' transformation had consumed at least 30% of Lin Muyu's power. Therefore, not only did she have to kill Bai Minghuan, she also had to kill thousands of divine cloth army soldiers. Only then would she be able to shake their morale. Under the super close attack, Bai Minghuan floated in the air, his eyes lost. His chest, legs, and even his forehead all had holes, which were the signs of being pierced by the star power. Bang! The body exploded. The Tianji Empire's marshal, Bai Minghuan, had actually died on the battlefield, just like the marshal of the Blackstone Empire, Bailey Qin. Chapter 927. Bai Minghuan is dead. Lin Muyu endured the pain from the backfire of the seven glorious stars, stood in the air, holding Bai Minghuan's collar with one hand, and carried his body in the air. For a moment, all the soldiers of the Tianji Empire on the ground were dumbfounded. Yes, that cloak was Bai Minghuan's martial cloak. Everyone was stunned. Bai Minghuan was an invincible god emperor. How could he die? However, Bai Minghuan was still dead. The morale of the army was in chaos. On the ground, Situ Sen and Situ Shui led the army of the Longdan army camp to kill the enemies who had lost their will to fight. Feng Jixing also waved the flag, and Luoyu, Zhang Wei, and the others led the charge. It seemed that the initiative of the war had returned to the side of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin was covered in wounds, and the star's sword in her hand was shaking slightly. But her golden-red eyes of flame were staring at another figure in the air, and she shouted, "Dora, it's time for you to pay with your life." What? Dora, who was fighting with Tang Xiaoxi, hurriedly waved the bone spear to shake off Tang Xiaoxi's sharp claws. But Qin Yin was too fast. Under the gaze of the eyes of flame, Dora felt that he had nowhere to hide. At the same time, the star's sword carried the power of the first strike of Shi Yan's 7 cuts, and instantly burst out dense sword shadows. Tang Xiaoxi took the opportunity to take a step back to catch her breath. There was a hint of exhaustion on her beautiful face. It was obvious that fighting against Dora, who was wielding 2 divine weapons, had taken too much of her demon power. "Sheen, you traitor of the heaven realm." Dora bellowed as her expression turned sinister. For black wings spread open on her back, and her aura was even stronger than Qin Yin's. Dora was a black-winged battle angel. The more people she killed, the stronger her bloodlust would become, and the more power her black wings would absorb. At this moment, it was only natural that her cultivation had surpassed Qin Yin's. The spear continued to stab forward, and after nearly 20 swings, Qin Yin's split strike was finally resolved. Without waiting for Dola to recover, Qin Yin directly launched the second strike of Shi Yan's 7 slashes, Judgment. Dola's murderous nature was so strong that even Qin Yin, with her kind nature, wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. Whoosh! The dagger of time suddenly flashed, and the space seemed to freeze. Qin Yin's slash speed also slowed down by more than 10 times. Dora, on the other hand, had a hint of a smile on her face. Suddenly, her figure flashed, and the sharp spear in her hand stabbed straight at Qin Yin's back. Clang! The spear directly pierced through the god wall. Just as Dora thought he had succeeded, the wild glint in his eyes grew even brighter. However, the spear could not advance any further no matter how hard he tried. That was because a strong hand had grabbed the middle of the spear. It was Lin Muyu. You! Dora could not help but groan inwardly. Let go. Lin Muyu raised her hand and swung her sword. The Xianyuan sword carried the profound energy of the third star and the overwhelming righteous energy as it swept across. This tyrannical power had yet to even reach Dora, but it already made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Dora had a ruthless heart that respected the strong, so he hated the holy energy contained within the Xianyuan sword, which contained the power of heaven and earth and had compassion for all living things. If he did not let go of the spear, this arm was destined to die under the Xianyuan sword. Dora had no doubt that the person who could kill Bai Minghuan could easily kill him as well. Moreover, this sword was really too powerful. It must be a divine weapon from outside the heaven domain. Otherwise, it could not have such a tyrannical aura. This kind of strength was not something that the weapons in the mortal realm could match. Whoosh! Dora hurriedly retracted his hand. Lin Muyu threw the spear backward and shouted, "Xiao Shi, catch!" In the air, Tang Xiaoxi's 9 flame tails gathered together and flew away. She successfully got the spear. Taking a deep breath, she smiled gently and said, "Mu, got it." As she spoke, Lin Muyu had already stood in front of Qin Yin and attacked Dora 7 or 8 times in a row. Each attack was fiercer than the last. The invisible elephant spell's aura was so overwhelming that Dora could not handle it. The Xianyuan sword's attacks also had a killing effect. Broken feathers kept flying out of Dora's 4 black wings. It was a tragic scene. Qin Yin's eyes were full of hatred. The aura of the flaming eyes was locked on Dora, making her feel like she was dying. "Brother, you must kill her, or she will kill more of us." Lin Muyu's attacks became even more ferocious, while Qin Yin summoned the god-binding chains and the celestial dragon crystal to assist her in battle. The 3 of them clashed in the air, and the wounds on Dora's body increased. "Luo Fei, save me!" She couldn't help but scream. However, Luo Fei did not even have the time to save himself. How could he have the leisure to save her? In the middle of the battle in the air, a person wielding an ice spear urged his dragon to charge down. He shouted, "Miss Dora, I'll cover you. Retreat quickly." The person was none other than Lin Tongtian, one of the 3 dragon riders. The ice spear shone brightly and turned into an ice wall in front of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Dora held the dagger of time and suddenly moved a few hundred meters away. That was the ability to accelerate time. Bang, bang. Lin Muyu broke the ice wall with 2 swords. She looked at Lin Tongtian coldly and said, "We meet again." "Ha ha ha, that's right. It's a pity that I had eyes but failed to see. I didn't know that you were the Qin Emperor of the Qin Empire. If I had known, I would have killed you at all costs." Lin Tongtian's body trembled slightly. He had already used up a lot of his divine power in the previous battle. Now that he had to fend off Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, he was almost at the end of his rope. He didn't even have enough strength to flap his dragon wings. Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and said, "Do you know the consequences of letting Dora go?" "I don't know. I only know that Miss Dora is an angel from the upper realm. Our Tianji Empire is a territory of the upper realm. I have to save her. Otherwise, it will bring disaster to the empire." Lin Tongtian stood on the dragon's back and looked at Lin Muyu with clear eyes. He said, "Your Highness, the Qin Emperor, I'm sure you don't want to let me go. In that case, make your move. I know that the Lin Tongtian of today is no match for you. Moreover, you have a godly weapon that is even more powerful than the Dig spear." Lin Muyu lowered the Xianyuan sword in her hand and said, "You are an old acquaintance of Yao. I won't kill you. Take your own life. I'll leave you with a whole corpse. In that case, thank you very much." Lin Tongtian's face was full of gratitude. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin guarded the left and right sides of Lin Tongtian. Lin Tongtian probably couldn't even defeat one of the three, let alone all three of them. Ha 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 ha, Lin Tongtian suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His voice was trembling as he said, "I, Lin Tongtian, have spent my entire life killing enemies for the empire and wiping out the demon spirits. I never thought that I would die in a foreign land. Perhaps this is karma. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, if the two of you conquer the world one day, please treat the people of the world kindly." Lin Muyu said softly, "Don't worry, sir. We will. In that case, I have no regrets. Tell Miss Si Kongyao that although I, Lin Tongtian, failed her request not to attack the Shattered Cauldron world, I have been doing my duty ever since I entered the Shattered Cauldron world. I didn't kill a single commoner. I restrained my subordinates and tried my best to prevent the people from suffering. Take this as my compensation to Miss Si Kongyao." Ha ha ha. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I should have followed Miss to the Blackstone Empire and become a mercenary. He didn't know that the mercenary Bai Zhe was actually Lin Muyu's subordinate. Qin Yin couldn't bear to see him like this. She said, "Lin Tongtian, if you have any regrets, why don't you stay in the Qin Empire? We will treat every capable general well." "No." Lin Tongtian shook his head and said, "I'm already getting old. I still know what shame and integrity are. A loyal subject doesn't serve two masters. We'll meet again in the next life." As he said this, the divine power in Lin Tongtian's body suddenly became chaotic. Golden light burst out and his joints and meridians exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. His cultivation dissipated in the blink of an eye and he fell to his knees on the dragon's back. His black hair turned white in an instant. Once his divine power dissipated, he naturally lost the ability to maintain his youth. Lin Tongtian's face aged rapidly and he looked towards the east with tears streaming down his face. Lin Muyu's nose turned sour. She said softly, "Don't worry, my lord. I'll send someone to bring your ashes back to the celestial pole continent and hand them over to Yao. She'll bury you in your hometown." Lin Tongtian raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu. He lowered his head and fell backward. Just like that, Lin Tongtian, a dragon rider general and one of Si Kongming's 3 disciples, committed suicide on the battlefield by destroying his meridians. Retreat. Defend the shore. The shout of the 4-winged radiant angel, Midnight, came from the sky. He shook off the Beeman King and raised his palm. A ray of light shone down, forcing the other 3 members of the 4 Masters of White Leaves to retreat. He turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. If the 4-winged radiant angel wanted to leave, there weren't many people who could stop him. On the ground, the army of the Tianji Empire also retreated like the tide. However, it wasn't easy for all of them to cross the river. This was a hard-won opportunity for a counterattack. Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu wouldn't let it go. The Longdan army camp, the Imperial Guards, and the other legions counterattacked one after another. The sound of killing soared into the sky. At this time, the sun had already set. After a whole day of killing, the battlefield was extremely bleak. However, it was gratifying that the Qin Empire had won a Pyrrhic victory. In the sky, there were still 3 dragon knights flying around. They were covering the retreat of the ground troops and releasing sword energy into the crowd. At the same time, one of them raised his head and saw a new magic crystal cannon on the city wall. He couldn't help but raise his dragon spear and shouted, "Follow me and destroy it." However, the protector of this dragon crystal cannon was Situ's senator. However, Situ-san didn't stop the dragon knights from coming. He just said to the artilleryman beside him, "It's done. Aim and fire." "Yes, General." The cannon was quickly calibrated and the muzzle was raised. Bang! A flame was spat out. This magic crystal cannon didn't seem to be very powerful. It exploded less than 100 meters away from the barrel. Moreover, the range of the explosion was far less than the 50 meters of the heavy magic crystal cannon. It was only 10 meters. However, one of the dragon knights had already entered the explosion range. In the shock wave, tiny stones flew out and shot into the dragon knight's body. It actually avoided the dragon imperial spiral. Ah, a miserable howl came from the sky. The people of the imperial army were dumbfounded. The magic crystal cannon had always been useless against the dragon knights. However, this cannon seemed to have hit the dragon knight. Chapter 928. Qin Xiling clapped his hands and laughed. "Sure enough, it's a success. Our god-slaying cannon has succeeded." Situ-san looked to the other side and said, "Magic crystal cannon, give it a try." "Yes." In the air, the god-level dragon knight that was hit hurriedly urged his dragon to escape, but it seemed that he couldn't escape the magic crystal cannon that was being calibrated on the city wall behind him. Bang! Raging flames stuck out its tongue, and suddenly there was an explosion 300 meters away. The light from the explosion of the magic crystal cannon instantly engulfed the dragon knight. Without the protection of the dragon imperial battle wheel, both the dragon knight and the dragon knight were blown to pieces. Even his divinity was probably blown up. On the city wall, a group of soldiers were dancing with joy. Looking at the enemies retreating like the tide, they suddenly felt that they had a new lease of life. The most important thing was that the Qin Empire finally had a weapon to deal with the god state strong, the god-slaying cannon. Although it was only a prototype, at least it could be used as a deterrent. The battle went on until late at night. Most of the Tianji Empire's troops had already crossed the river. Those who couldn't cross the river were either killed or captured. Jianghu was not their territory. That night, almost no one slept. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi, and the others also didn't sleep. The battle was in full swing, and no one could sleep. Moreover, almost everyone needed to heal. The steel wall had been blown up for nearly 5 kilometers, and there was basically no way to station troops in the city. Therefore, most of the troops were stationed in the unicorn forest behind the wall. At dawn, thousands of lights connected in the forest, and the sound of cooking could be heard everywhere. The soldiers had been fighting for a day and needed to replenish their strength. In the central tent, Chiyao carefully applied medicine and bandaged Qin Yin's wound. She said, "Your Highness, who injured you to this extent?" Qin Yin closed her eyes and smiled softly. "It's not someone else who injured me. I just broke into the spirit wheel." "Sister Chuyao, thank you so much. When you bandaged me, he didn't know how to control his strength. It hurts so much," Chuyao giggled. "You is a general, so of course he doesn't know what's important." Lin Muyu was sitting at the side, using his qi to heal Tang Xiaoxi's injuries. He realized that Tang Xiaoxi's bones would be damaged after her second transformation. If she didn't receive treatment for a long time, she would definitely become a cripple. Fortunately, his supreme divine power was of the same origin as Fushi's divine power, and Fushi's divine power itself had the ability to heal the divine body. Terlin, Lake, Xiangyu, Chu Chu, Su Hao, and the others also returned one by one. The battle during the day ended before dawn the next day, and the men from each battalion had also returned. When Jin Yifan and Suyu opened the tent door and walked in, Lin Muyu knew the results were out. "Master Fan, what's the result of the calculation?" Lin Muyu asked. Zheng Yifan bowed respectfully, then bowed to Qin Yin and said, "Reporting to Your Highness, our army lost more than 114,000 men in this battle. That's half of our military strength." "So many?" Tang Xiaoxi murmured. "Yes." Zheng Yifan said, "The enemy's military strength was originally above ours." "So what's the result of the battle?" "We counted more than 143,000 corpses of the Tianji Empire's soldiers and more than 8,000 captives. According to the number of people, the Tianji Empire still has about 150,000 soldiers in the west of Daojiang, which is 50,000 more than us. Moreover, it is said that there are still warships of the Tianji Empire in the East Sea, and they have already begun to recruit new soldiers in Lingdong province." Jin Yifan's eyes were slightly uneasy as he said, "Your Highness, if the next battle is still like this, I'm afraid that even if we annihilate the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army, there won't be more than 10,000 soldiers left in our army." Qin Yin nodded, "Yes, I know. Master Fan, you've worked hard. Please take a seat." "Thank you, Your Highness." Feng Jixing sat cross-legged beside Lin Muyu and asked, "So what should we do next?" "Wait." Lin Muyu said, "Su Jiantao and Wei Chou have already led 5,000 light cavalry to the enemy's rear. Let's see how much rations they can burn. Once the Tianji Empire's rations run out, they will naturally retreat without attacking. At that time, we can just send our cavalry to chase after them. When their people are so hungry that they can't walk, they will naturally be defeated." "Yes, then let's wait." Feng Jixing nodded, then looked up and said, "Luo Yu, pass down my order. All the prefectures in Sangnan province must transfer half of the stored rations to the camp of the Tianji Empire's army, so that the soldiers can eat and drink to their heart's content and recuperate. In addition, gather warhorses and capture horses that get lost in the battle, the more the better." "Yes, Your Highness." "Also," Lin Muyu said, "Luo Yu, send people to the unicorn forest to cut down trees and make wooden rafts, the more the better. We need to build many pontoon bridges. Once the Tianji Empire retreats, it will be time for us to chase after them." "Yes, I understand." In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The injuries of Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, Qin Yin, Feng Jixing, and the others had basically recovered, but the repair work on the steel wall had not yet begun. It would only start after the battle was over. However, quite a number of civilian laborers had been recruited. Su Jiantao had guarded Sangnan province for 5 years, and he had been conscientious. Wugu City was overflowing with wealth, and the manpower and material resources could still be considered to be able to keep up. Early in the morning, a few more troops appeared on the official road. They were all private troops from Tianshu province and Yinzhong province who had heard the news. After hearing about the great victory of the Steel Wall, all the feudal lords from various places came to rescue the Empress. In fact, everyone knew that these people were just here to get a share of the spoils and receive more rewards after the Empress returned to Zetian Palace Hall. Even some of the bandit leaders brought their men down the mountains to rescue the Empress. The morning tea rippled with a faint fragrance. Qin Yin held the teacup and gently took a deep breath. She couldn't help but smile and say, "It still smells the same." Shangguan Jinghua chuckled and said, "Well, the tea in Wugu City is not much different from the tea in Lanyan City. It's good that Your Highness likes it." However, Feng Jixing was somewhat frowning. Although Qin Yin couldn't see it, she could feel it. "General Feng, what's wrong?" She was still used to calling Feng Jixing General Feng because this was how he used to be. Feng Jixing cupped his fists respectfully and said, "Your Highness, there are more and more troops in the Unicorn Forest. The feudal lords from Tianshu Province, Sangnan Province, and Lingbei Province have all taken out their family assets. This Unicorn Forest is filled with chaotic troops, but they don't obey orders. I sent Luo Yu and Zhang Wei to recruit their troops. The feudal lords from various places made different excuses, but none of them were willing to listen to my orders. Qin Yi nodded and didn't say anything. Su'er said, when the conscription order was issued, we also thought of this result, but we didn't expect it to develop to this point. Now, the imperial army in the Unicorn Forest only has a total of 100,000 people, while the feudal lords have close to 300,000 people. They are divided into hundreds of feudal armies, and the largest of them has 40,000 people. However, they are all a motley crew, and no one is willing to be the vanguard. Jin Yifan said, the laissez-faire of power has already made these feudal lords not know what a ruler is. Qin Yin bit her red lips and asked, Xiaoxi, what do you think? Tang Xiaoxi put down her teacup and said, I went to see the feudal lords' armies this morning, and it's not too much to call them a motley crew. Many of the troops are even made up of farmers. In order to gather a strong army, the feudal lords have gone around snatching people, and there's even a rule of drawing 1 out of 3. That's not all. There should be about 2 million feudal lords' armies in the entire country, but most of them are farmers. These people should be discharged from the army and returned to farming. Otherwise, if the land can't grow food, how can the empire continue to fight? Then what does Xiaoxi mean? We have to think of a way to not only appease the feudal lords, but also make them reduce the number of troops. Otherwise, if this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid we'll fall into chaos. Feng Jixing made a cutting gesture. In my opinion, it's better to cut the Gordian knot and slaughter all the feudal lords. We'll take their elite troops and disperse the rest of the troops. That won't do. Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. Your method may work in troubled times, but once we expel the bandits from the celestial pole continent, we'll be ruling the country. If we use General Feng's method to rule the country, Xiao Yin definitely won't be able to be the empress. Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, actually, it doesn't matter if I don't become the empress, as long as I can accompany you and you. Please don't. Tang Xiaoxi was a little anxious, and said, Xiao Yin, you must not have such an idea. If you don't become the empress, I'm afraid the world will really be in chaos. At that time, all the feudal lords will proclaim themselves as kings and fight each other. The Qin Empire will really be finished. All right then. I wonder what you thinks. Where is he? He went out early in the morning. I heard he went to spy on the military, so you couldn't help but frown. A dignified marshal of the 3 armies going out to spy on military affairs is simply child's play. When he comes back, we must give him a good warning. Pa. A crack appeared in the tent, and Lin Miyu stepped out and said with a smile, what does Aunt Luo want to warn me about? Suyu pursed her lips. What did you spy on? The Flowing Harmony Army and the Divine Cloth Army have already started packing their supplies. If nothing unexpected happens, they will definitely retreat within 3 days. In addition, there was no smoke in their camp at noon yesterday. If nothing unexpected happens, they have already run out of food, so they directly skipped their lunch. They ran out of food? Feng Jixing asked excitedly. Yes, it should be. Lin Muyu asked with a smile, Big Brother Feng, how many cavalry soldiers do we have? Don't worry. Feng Jixing said, I annihilated 60,000 wolf soldiers in Yunzhong province, and most of their mounts are well preserved. It can be said that as long as our main force of 100,000 soldiers can ride horses, we will have 100,000 cavalry. That's great. I saw that there are almost no warhorses in the stables of the Tianji Empire. They started slaughtering the warhorses a day ago. I reckon that in another 2 days, they will all become infantry. If nothing unexpected happens, Wei Chou and Su Jintao's operation behind the enemy's back has already been effective. The time to counterattack will also come in 1 or 2 days. Yes. Man proposes, but God disposes. Sometimes, no matter how scheming people were, the factors of the right time and the right place would not change because of people's will. Although the Tianji Empire was strong, it always lagged behind others and would eventually be defeated. Chapter 929. At night, the sky was filled with stars. The fog of the summer night slowly descended and turned into dew. The camp was damp, and the dew on the branches and leaves kept splashing down, making pitter-patter sounds on the tent as if it was raining. Gong Xiangming stood quietly under the lantern, raising his head to look at the stars in the sky. He did not speak. Whoosh! The tent door opened, and Castor, the commander of the Flowing Dawn army, appeared. "Why aren't you sleeping, advisor?" he asked with a smile. Gong Xiangming nodded and smiled. "How can I sleep?" "Why aren't you sleeping, commander?" "I can't sleep either." Castor rubbed his nose and said, "Have you heard the news, advisor? The Eternal Night sect, the Blood Cloak sect, and the other sects have all surrendered to the Four-Winged Angel, Zai. The entire Divine Cloak army is no longer under our control. It's as if it has become the private army of the Radiant Angel. This is not good. What else can we do?" Gong Xiangming seemed to be in a daze. "With the death of the marshal, we are without a leader. Neither you nor I have enough prestige to command the three armies. Even Lord Dragon Rider Lin Tongtian died in battle, and that Dora has joined Zai. At this moment, they are the true rulers. We can only take things one step at a time. The rear supply route has been cut off time and time again. The light cavalry of the Longdan army camp sometimes gathers and sometimes scatters. They come and go unpredictably and have already burned more than 20 of our granaries. We can't even feed our soldiers a full meal anymore. The warhorses have been eaten in 3 days, and it will take at least 10 days to walk to Winterfrost City. What can these 150,000 soldiers eat to last 10 days? Gong Xiangming was silent. "You are the advisor. You should at least say something, right?" Castor said calmly. "All right." Gong Xiangming looked up at Castor and asked, "Commander, do you think we are humans or beasts?" "Nonsense, of course we are humans." "Then I am at my wit's end." "Then." Castor frowned and said, "What if we are beasts?" "Then there is a way to feed the army." "What way?" "Eating human flesh." Gong Xiangming's voice was soft but firm. "Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. From here to Winterfrost City, although the land is barren and there are few cities and towns, there are still some villages. Send our people into the villages to capture the civilians of the Qin Empire and eat them. That way, the army may be able to make it back to Winterfrost City." Castor instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If they followed Gong Xiangming's plan, the Tianji Empire would no longer be able to establish itself in the Shattered Cauldron realm in the future. After all, who would support a man-eating army? His eyelids twitched violently as he said, "Military advisor, this is simply heartless. If we really do this, the Tianji Empire can forget about ruling over the Shattered Cauldron realm." "Hee, Commander, do you still think the Tianji Empire can defeat the Qin army?" "What do you mean?" "There are at least 800,000 troops recruited by our empire and Lord Zhang Cheng's troops. Why can't we win this war?" Gong Xiangming took a deep breath and said, "Because the Empress of the Qin Empire, Qin Yin, is back. With the loyalty of the people, and with the famous generals like Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Su Jiantao, and Wei Chou, how can we fight the Qin Empire? Even if we take a step back, we can only rely on the Dragon Knights. But now they have giant cannons that can kill the Dragon Knights. They are ahead of us in terms of weapons. If we continue to stay in the Shattered Cauldron realm, we will only be a burden to our homeland and the Tianji Empire. At that time, if the new emperor of the Celestial Empire, Qin Yu, uses force, I'm afraid even our homeland will be in the hands of others." Castor felt a chill down his spine. "Military advisor, are you serious? What else is there to hide from you?" Gong Xiangming turned around and patted Castor's shoulder lightly. He smiled and said, "Previously, we may have had some disagreements in terms of strategy and caused some misunderstandings. But now, there are no gaps at all. Commander, don't think that we are the victors anymore. The expeditionary army has already been defeated. If we continue to be stubborn, we will only push the Tianji Empire to the edge of a cliff. After all, the Tianji Empire is different from the Blackstone Empire. Our territory is vast and the people are rich. It is enough to compete with the Celestial Empire. We don't have to bet all our bets on the Shattered Cauldron realm. After all, in terms of military force and strategy, we have lost to the Qin Empire. Castor frowned. Military advisor, do you think we have lost to Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing in terms of strategy? Yes. Gong Shangming admitted. We killed the enemy with an absolute advantage in military force, but we suffered a crushing defeat. At least half of the responsibility of military strategy and command has to be borne. Then, what do we do now? Haven't we already decided to retreat? Commander, you can send 10,000 people into the villages and towns in the rear to capture people to make food. Then, you can leave 50,000 elites to persuade the godly Yi army to help us fight. We can camp every 20 miles and retreat step by step to prevent the Qin army from chasing after us. In this way, maybe we can return to Winter Frost City alive. Well, I got it. Thank you for your advice, military advisor. A ferocious smile appeared at the corner of Castor's mouth. In the battle a few days ago, we captured more than 2,000 soldiers of the Qin Empire. It's just right. Let's make them into food first. Gong Shangming was silent. From a military point of view, eating people was right. But from a moral point of view, the Tianji army was gradually becoming a beast. The morale of the army would change sooner or later. It was just that a reckless man like Castor did not understand such a change. The next morning, the soldiers of the Liuji army got up one after another, ready to break camp and retreat. But the meal before the retreat made many people vomit, because they found human fingers, legs, and other body parts in the soup pot. Unknowingly, the army rations had changed from grains to human flesh. Many people refused to eat it, and many people vomited after eating or drinking a mouthful of soup. Castor held the soup bowl and looked at the people coldly. He drank the soup in one gulp and shouted in a low voice, "If you don't eat, you won't have the strength to march. If you want to leave here alive, then eat. Eat as much as you can. Otherwise, stay here and become the food of the Qin army. Let me tell you, the meat in the soup pot is the meat of the enemy. We are not afraid of the living Qin army, let alone the dead ones. Eat the meat, and then you can go back to your hometown alive." Many of the soldiers cried and chewed as they cried. Gong Shangming, dressed in a long robe, stood quietly among a group of strategists. His face was livid. He did not eat anything, but he was so hungry that his eyes almost went blurry. Break camp and retreat. The bugle horn sounded. The 150,000 soldiers of the Tianji Empire finally retreated. In the west of Daojiang, behind a dilapidated steel wall, a scout of the empire entered the main tent and said respectfully, "They have retreated." "That's great." Feng Jixing slammed the table and said, "Prepare to give chase immediately." The scout's face did not look too good. He said, "There's one more thing." "Oh? What is it?" "Say it," Lin Muyu said. The scout gritted his teeth and said, "Our people found out that they killed all the captives and used them as food last night. More than 2,000 people of the empire who were captured, all died for the empire. Beasts, they are a bunch of beasts." Xiang Yu roared. Qin Yin's delicate body trembled slightly. She clenched her fists tightly. The golden flames between her eyelashes became even colder. Lin Muyu gently held her hand and said softly, "War is like this. We have seen a lot of such things over the years." "I know, but those soldiers of the empire should not die like this. They will rest in peace because we will avenge them." Lin Muyu's words were sonorous. She said, "Since they are out of food, they will try their best to get food. Bring me the map and see which towns are on the way to Winter Frost City. We must reinforce these towns as soon as possible. We cannot let the people of the empire continue to become food for the enemy." "Yes." Jin Yifan suddenly said in a low voice, "Your Highness Yu, if we give chase, what will happen to the feudal vassal army?" They have gathered nearly 400,000 men and horses, and food is also very scarce. Lin Muyu frowned. I don't know. Does Duke Fan have any ideas on this matter? The feudal vassal army appears to be united, but they are actually divided. Each of them has ulterior motives. We must appease them well. Otherwise, there will be chaos. In that case, Duke Fan is the empire's god of war. Your prestige is enough to intimidate these feudal vassals. Why don't you stay behind and appease them? This way, Commander Feng Jixing and I can focus on pursuing the enemy. Jin Yifan nodded. Please rest assured, Your Highness Yin and Your Highness Yu. I will do my best. Yes. Qin Yin stood up and said, I will pursue the enemy with Commander Yu. Aunt C, you should stay behind as well and assist Duke Fan in appeasing the feudal vassals. We must be careful in this matter. Su Yu cupped her fists. Yes, Your Highness. So, it's decided? Feng Jixing asked. Qin Yin nodded. Yes. Good. Tell the three armies to prepare to cross the river and pursue them. In the afternoon, countless bamboo rafts and wooden rafts were placed in the Rice River. They joined together to form a man-made pontoon bridge. War horses neighed as they crossed the river. The waves of the Rice River were turbulent, but it could not stop the pursuit of the imperial army. Nearly 100,000 people had crossed the Rice River in less than 4 hours. However, they could not carry heavy weapons anymore. The pontoon bridge could not bear the weight of the heavy magic crystal cannons. Before evening, the cavalry led by Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing had already caught up with the Tianji Empire's army. After a fierce battle, more than 10,000 people were beheaded. It seemed that the Tianji Empire had lost their will to fight and was unwilling to continue the battle. They only left an army to cover the rear. However, they were unlucky. They were targeted by the main force of the Qin Empire's army. At midnight, the War Eagle Scouts reported that an army of the God Yi army had gone to Longhai County. There were nearly 50,000 residents in Longhai County. Once the hungry God Yi army arrived, almost all the civilians there would become food. Lin Muyu decided to split up the army. Feng Jixing, Tang Xiaoxi, and Xiang Yu would lead the main force to continue the pursuit. Meanwhile, he and Qin Yin would lead 20,000 cavalrymen from the Longdan army camp and go straight to Longhai County. Chapter 930. It was Longhai County, which was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. There were 3 official roads leading to the periphery. Most of the civilians in the county lived by farming and hunting. Most of them were farmers and hunters. Sangnan Province had experienced many wars, but Longhai County had escaped the disaster because it was relatively hidden. They had escaped the attack of the Iha Kingdom and the slaughter of the armored demon army of the Demon Clan, but they had not escaped the baptism of the Divine Cloth Army. At this time, the city walls were filled with the Divine Clothing Army in red armor. The city was filled with cries and shouts. The entire city had been sealed off. The Divine Clothing Army was capturing people in the city. Moreover, they did not intend to cook the people immediately. Instead, they wanted to feed the group of people. As they walked, they would eat them. They even wanted to dry the meat and use it as rations. This group of Divine Cloth Army soldiers were from the Eternal Night sect. They wore red armor and black robes. Most of them were practitioners, but most of them were in the human realm, the earth realm, and the heaven realm. Without food, they would also be hungry, and they were no different from mortals. In the city, the civilians were connected by iron chains, crying. They did not know what was waiting for them, but it was obviously not good. On the square, Jin Luan, the white-haired suzerain of the Eternal Night sect, was riding on a warhorse. He looked at his subordinates coldly and said, "Finish the battle quickly. We must leave this city in 2 hours." "Yes." A Chiliarch asked, "Suzerain, no, Commander, we have captured a lot of beautiful women. What should we do?" Jin Luan was a little angry. "You still want to kill women at this moment? You are courting death. Send my order to kill them all. We must not be dragged down by women. What we need is food. Immediately rob their granaries and use them as food for the army. Yes. Before he could finish his words, a rider arrived. It was a messenger with a Saint Realm cultivation base. He cupped his fists and reported, "Sovereign, there are people coming from outside. There are many torches in the distance, and all of them are cavalries. It seems like they are the main force of the Qin army." Main force? Jean Luen narrowed his eyes. Humph, how many people are there? About 20,000. The Qin army is too arrogant. How dare they take the initiative to attack us with 20,000 people? Don't they know that there are 30,000 divine cloth army in this small Longhai county? Send my order to prepare for battle. Rely on the strength of the city to repel the enemy. Open the east gate of the city. Once they are stopped, immediately retreat from the east gate. Yes. Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army had arrived at the west gate of Longhai County. Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army led Lin Muyu's soldiers in the city. Under the city, the soldiers of Longhai had arrived. Of guards of the Longdan Longhai County. On the city wall, the soldiers of the Divine Cloth Army were waiting in formation, holding bows and crossbows in their hands. One of the captains shouted, "Who are you? Are you here to die?" Lin Muyu frowned and did not answer. She just said to Situ Shui next to her, "Shui, order the magic crystal crossbow troop to fire the magic crystal crossbows. Blow up the west gate." "Yes." Situ Shui smiled cheerfully. After all, Longhai County was just a remote county city. Its defense was not strong at all. The city wall was only 5 meters high, and its thickness was very average. It could be blown up by the magic crystal crossbows, let alone the magic crystal cannons. "Hey, are you deaf or mute? Answer me." The captaincy seemed to be a little impatient. However, as soon as he finished speaking, purple rays of light suddenly shot out from the enemy's battle formation. Surprisingly, they were magic crystal arrows that landed on the city wall. The miniature magic crystals tied to the arrows glowed dazzlingly, and after 3 seconds, they quickly exploded. Boom, boom, boom. A series of flames appeared on the city wall. In the blink of an eye, the nearly 100 meters high wall had been razed to the ground. Charge in. Lin Muyu raised the Xian Yuan sword and shouted, "Anyone who wears the uniform of the Divine Cloth Army, kill them all." The cavalry quickly broke through the city wall and fought with the guards in the city. In the air, a person roared and launched a divine attack. Balls of flames blasted into the crowd of people in the Longdan army camp. Suddenly, dozens of people died. There was actually a god state expert on the other side. It was an old man with white hair. But obviously, he was not worthy of respect at this time. He was just a killing maniac. "I'll take care of him." Lin Muyu jumped off the warhorse. Suddenly, his aura increased a lot. He rushed forward and attacked with his long sword with the energy of the purple sun falling to the ground. "I am Jean Luen, the leader of the Eternal Night sect." "Who are you? Tell me your name." In the dark, Jean Luen could not see Lin Muyu's face at all. He could only see the golden sword in his hand. But he could not hear the answer. Crack. The Xianyuan sword was so sharp that it instantly sliced through the steel sword in Jean Luen's hand. Following the momentum, it sliced Jean Luen's head and shoulders into 2. A mere godly state expert at the 28th level of Grotto Heaven was completely unable to withstand Lin Muyu's attack. "Lin Muyu," he said softly. But he realized that Jean Luen was already dead. He was destined not to hear this sentence. The leader is dead, the leader is dead in battle, the leader was killed, the crowd was in chaos. The main force of the Divine Cloth Army, which was made up of cultivators from the Eternal Night sect, seemed to have lost their backbone in an instant. Lin Muyu, who was holding the Xianyuan sword, waved her long sword like a god of death. It was as if there was no one around her. When a few captains were trying their best to maintain the momentum of defeat, another golden light bloomed in the sky. It was Qin Yin's golden wings. The eyes of the blazing dawn slowly opened, and the divine cloth army almost instantly lost the ability to fight. Terlin, Lake, Zhou Shimin, and other battle angels took advantage of the situation and swept across. Sita Shui, Fengxi, and others on the ground quickly killed them. The God E army had already been defeated. Even if their cultivation level was higher than the ordinary soldiers of the Longdan army camp, these God E army were not real soldiers after all. When they encountered such a battle formation, they would naturally panic. With the presence of gods such as Lin Wuyu, Qin Yin, and Terlin, it was not surprising that they were defeated. In this way, there was a chaotic battle in the city. It was not until the early morning of the next day that the battle ended. The Longdan army camp wiped out nearly half of the God E army with the loss of 4,000 people. Under such an advantage, they still had to pay 4,000 people for killing 20,000 people. It was enough to show that the reputation of the 7 great sects of the celestial pole continent was not undeserved. However, this battle had also greatly affected the arrogance of the God E army, and the nearly 10,000 people who fled had no fighting spirit to speak of. On the 19th of July, after a short rest and feeding of the warhorses, the Longdan army camp attacked again in the morning. In less than an hour, they caught up with the defeated 10,000 God E army in the valley between 2 mountains and quickly massacred them. This time, the loss was very small. The entire 30,000 people of the God E army were all killed, and there were no more than 100 people left alive. It could be said to be extremely tragic. On the 20th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi fought with the main forces of the Flowing Wind Army in Yang County, killing more than 30,000 people, and the Flowing Wind Army continued to be defeated. On the 22nd of July, Lin Muyu led the Longdan army camp to annihilate a group of scattered soldiers of the Flowing Wind Army at the south bank of the Daojiang tributary, killing more than 4,000 people. On the 24th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi caught up with Castor's troops again. They fought for 2 days and 2 nights at the border of Lingdong province, killing more than 10,000 people. On the 25th of July, the army of Xianghu killed more than 3,000 people. On the 26th of July, the armies of the Tianji Empire and the Qin Empire entered the territory of Lingdong province. The Longdan army camp finally caught up with the main forces of the Blood E army. They attacked from both sides with the banished army led by Ding Shi and defeated the main forces of the Blood E army, killing more than 20,000 people. On the 27th of July, the army of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi intercepted the remaining troops of Castor outside Winter Frost City, killing more than 5,000 people. On the 28th of July, a total of 5 armies including the Longdan army camp, the Forbidden Army, and the Banished Army arrived at Winter Frost City one after another and recaptured the Dongdu. On the 3rd of August, with the mediation of Gong Shangming, the Flowing Wind Army and the Godly E Army joined forces again and fought with the main forces of the Qin Empire 300 miles north of Winter Frost City, but they were defeated. On the 17th of August, Zai and Gong Shangming officially returned to the Tianji Empire from the East Sea in search of warships, with less than 10,000 people remaining. At this point, the vigorous expedition of the Tianji Empire finally ended in failure. The 400,000 troops occupied 42 states on the territory of the Qin Empire at most, but they still failed at the last moment. The total number of soldiers who returned to the mainland was less than 10,000, and the whole country mourned. At the same time, the Battle of Tsangnan Province, which lasted more than a month, finally ended. From Tsangnan Province to the Dongdu, the army chased and killed more than 310,000 enemies with the momentum of conquering the country. On the 14th of September 7742 of the Empire calendar, it was autumn. The Empress Qin Yin returned to Lanyan City under the escort of nearly 100,000 soldiers. The army was majestic and stretched for 5 miles. The maple trees along the way were all red, and everything in the capital seemed to be the same as before. However, Qin Yin couldn't open her eyes to see it. Some things couldn't be reversed, just like her black eyes. This was the punishment of fate and the price of happiness. Lin Muyu, who was wearing a white robe of the imperial forest, rode on Takshu. She rode shoulder to shoulder with Chu Chu on one side of Qin Yin, while Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi rode on warhorses on the other side. As for Terlin, Lake, and the others, they had already entered the city to enjoy the prosperity of the capital. Qin Yin closed her eyes, but there was a sweet smile at the corner of her mouth. For so many years, this scene only appeared in her dreams, but now it was happening in front of her eyes. Everyone was still there, and everything was the same as before. However, the price of defeating the Tianji Empire was too high. The Qin Empire had paid an almost equal amount of losses. As a result, the Longdan Army Camp, the Imperial Guards, the God Might Battalion, the Iron Blade Army, and all the other Imperial legions added up only had a total of 100,000 soldiers. The Shattered Cauldron Realm couldn't afford a second expedition by the Tianji Empire, and the Tianji Empire. Hopefully, they couldn't afford a war either. Brother Yu. Qin Yin suddenly called out softly. What's the matter, Xiao Yin? I want a branch of a maple tree. Oh, it's a piece of cake. Lin Muyu picked one from the roadside and handed it to Qin Yin. Qin Yin held the branch and brought it to her nose to sniff. How is it? What's the smell? Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Qin Yin pouted and said, it's obviously a branch of a locust tree. You lied to me, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others burst into laughter. The Emperor of Qin teasing the Empress was something that everyone was looking forward to, right? Peace was like a dream that people yearned for and indulged in. Chapter 931. Lanyan City was the political and economic center of the empire. During the war, this rich city provided the front line with countless provisions, armors, weapons, and diseases. Now, the war situation had finally calmed down temporarily. The citizens of Lanyan City lined the streets to welcome the triumphant return of the empire's army. When they saw Qin Yin in the empress's robe, they were so excited that they couldn't speak. Finally, the era of the three kings was over, and the chaos in the world should also come to an end. Is the war over? Lin Muyu smiled bitterly. She was afraid that it was far from over. The military strength of the celestial pole continent was still several times that of the Shattered Realm. This time, the defeat of the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army might lead to a new change in the structure of the celestial pole continent. No one knew what the future would be like, so they could only be cautious and careful. Qin Yin had already changed her angel costume into the military uniform of the Empire's female general. She wore a dark blue robe embroidered with golden-purple flowers. This was the standard attire of the Empress during the war, but she kept her eyes closed and followed Lin Muyu all the way to Zhe Tian Palace Hall. Behind the Empress, the Imperial Guards who had gone to war had already been reduced from more than 100 to at least less than 30. It was very dismal. At least, the Empire's generals were still intact. At least, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, Zhen Yifan, and the others were still alive. These people were the cornerstones of the empire. Qin Yin was very clear that if the soldiers were gone, they could be recruited again. If the famous generals were gone, then it was unknown when a new famous general would emerge. Zhe Tian Palace Hall had already been cleaned in advance. It was solemn and splendid. Everyone walked slowly into the main hall without resting. There were still many things to deal with after the war, so this afternoon was bound to be very busy. Your subjects welcome your highness back to the court. Everyone knelt down one after another. Even the three kings, Lin Muyu, Qin Yan, and Feng Jixing, knelt at the front of the officials. They were distinguished lords, but in front of Qin Yin, they were still officials. Everyone, please rise. Qin Yin stood up and walked step by step to the edge of the imperial steps. She bowed to the crowd and said, I haven't been in the empire for many years. Everyone has worked hard. It is because of everyone's blood that the Qin clan can still stand on this continent. I, Qin Yin, thank you all on behalf of the Qin clan. Everyone said in unison, we have no regrets serving the empire. Qin Yin looked at Lin Muyu and said, Your Highness you. Lin Muyu was stunned. Xiao Yin? Qin Yin nodded and slowly knelt in front of Lin Muyu. She smiled faintly and said, Big brother you were originally a genius and could live a xiaoyao's life without caring about worldly affairs. But because of Xiao Yin, Big brother you has suffered so much for so many years. I know it's all my fault. It's hard for you to meet me. She was very moved. The eyelashes under her eyes trembled slightly as she knelt on the ground. Lin Muyu hurriedly walked forward and held her arms. She said softly, Xiao Yin, you are crazy. You are the Empress. How can you kneel to an official? Quickly get up. Qin Yin pursed her red lips. Not only am I the Empress, I am also your younger sister. We are not monarch and official. Anyway, you can't kneel to me. Quickly get up. Okay. When Qin Yin stood up, Lin Muyu then knelt down with a peace of mind. She raised her eyes and glared at Shangguan Jingyue. She had neglected her duties as the chief female official. However, Shangguan Jingyue also looked helpless. Obviously, she did not have any cultivation. How could she stop what Qin Yin wanted to do? In the main hall, there were many officials. At least more than 200 civil and military officials followed Qin Yin back to Zhe Tian Hall. In addition to the original high-ranking officials of Lanyan City, there were at least 300 people standing in the main hall. Feng Jixing touched his nose. He felt that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu were showing off. He said softly, I feel that you are going to be promoted. Why? Lin Muyu was stunned. Feng Jixing said, Her Highness treats you as a brother and a lover. You are the main contributor. If you don't get promoted, who else will? Get promoted to an X, Lin Muyu couldn't help but curse, we're all royal nobles now. Below monarchs are royal nobles. The three of us are only below one person, but above tens of thousands. If we go any higher, we'll be breaking the heavens. I think we're lucky to not be demoted. Oh, why? Feng Jixing was puzzled. Lin Muyu said softly, Look at the many officials behind us. Many of them are princes from various places. Their troops will soon arrive at Lanyan City. It is called rescuing the emperor, but in fact, they are taking advantage of the empire to ask for official positions. Just wait and see. Now that Xiao Yin is back, the three of us will definitely not be able to stay as princes for long. Feng Jixing frowned. You are right. I should have thought of this a long time ago. They will definitely restrict the power of the three of us. However, as long as we hold the military power in our hands, everything will be fine. The crux is that we don't have the military power in our hands. Lin Muyu said, Look, my Longdan army camp and your imperial guards only have a total of less than 30,000 people. It's pitifully small. Any one of these honest princes behind us might have a military power that surpasses ours. The actual situation is that our army has been depleted in battle, while the military power of this group of people is still very intact. Feng Jixing clenched his fist. It's fine. Don't worry. We are gods, and you are a god who possesses a supreme character. If they really make things difficult for us, we'll just kill every prince that comes. What's the big deal? Then the world will probably really be in chaos. Lin Muyu glared at him. Brother Feng, you are too straightforward. You try to discuss everything with me first before making a decision. You are getting more and more cautious in doing things. It's no wonder that the former emperor took you in as his godson. Qin Yan coughed. Hey, Prince Qin and Prince Xian, it's court time now. The two of you should speak softly. Cousin and everyone else are looking at you. Cough, cough, as expected, Zhen Yifan, Su Yu, Tang Xiaoxi, and the other princes were all staring at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, the two greatest contributors to the empire's revival. Every one of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Logically speaking, people who had made such immortal contributions should be steady, but these two were too careless. Qin Yin smiled and said, then, shall we begin the court discussion? Present the memorial one by one. Yes. Not long after, Zheng Yifan took a step forward with a jade tablet in his hand and said, Your Highness, this old subject has a memorial. Please speak, Lord Fan. Zheng Yifan said, the Empire's army has been continuously reduced over the years. Its military strength has been reduced from the original hundreds of thousands to the current 100,000. This old subject thinks that the new recruits recruited by the various princes are too many and difficult to train. This old subject thinks that we should draw soldiers from the armies of the various princes and replenish the Empire's regular army, restoring the army's original organizational structure as soon as possible. Qin Yin nodded in approval and said, yes, this is indeed an urgent matter. Then, what do the princes think? In the crowd, a dignified middle-aged general cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, this is not appropriate. When we recruited soldiers, it was because the country was in danger, so the people were willing to put down their farming and go to the emperor's aid. But now that the enemy has been eliminated, this subordinate thinks that these soldiers should return to farming. Otherwise, the empire will no longer have usable military rations. The person who spoke was called Zhuang Yan, the governor of Xiang City. He commanded more than 50,000 troops and was also one of the strongest princes. Zheng Yifan couldn't help but laugh and said, Lord Zhuang Yan, if all the princes left with their troops, then who will protect the imperial capital Lanyan City? Moreover, the empire's army urgently needs to replenish its military strength. All of you are also His Highness's subjects, shouldn't you serve the country? Another old general laughed. He stroked his white beard and said, what Lord Fan said is a little biased. Although it is the duty of a minister to be loyal to the country, we have to be worthy of the emperor and worthy of the common people. We can't disregard the lives of the people for our own selfishness, am I right? Lord Su Changjing really knows how to talk, Zheng Fang said resentfully. Su Changjing was the biggest prince in Yinzhong province, with more than 45,000 troops. Some people said that he was the illegitimate son of the Duke of Muyun, Su Muyun, but no one knew whether it was true or not. But now that he had become famous, he couldn't be underestimated. Lin Muyu was a little angry. She turned around to look at the group of princes and said, military strength, are you going to give it or not? Just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Tell me, are you willing to contribute your military strength to the Empire's army? He had already used the invisible elephant technique's domain. For a moment, all the princes felt as if they were in an ice cave, almost unable to breathe. Of course, there's nothing we can't do, Su Changjing said. Zhuang Yan said, but the provinces and prefectures do need military strength, and more than half of the soldiers have to go back to farming. Therefore, I've decided to take 10% of the military strength from each army and give it to the Ministry of War. This is more reasonable. 10%? Qin Yin frowned slightly. What's enough for 10%? 20%. No one is allowed to disobey. Otherwise, they will be punished according to military law. Yes. The group of princes knelt down one after another, their faces pale. Qin Yin continued, in 7 days, all the soldiers must be reported to the Ministry of War. The Ministry of Personnel will reward the princes according to the number of troops they have handed over. The reward ceremony will be held in 7 days. Thank you, Your Highness. The ministers cheered. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Tang Xiaoxi all wore cold expressions. Obviously, the situation was no longer under Zhe Tian Palace's control. The princes had their own ideas, and the people's hearts were in chaos. Late at night, there was a sea of sparks outside Lanyan City. The troops of various princes arrived one after another. In the darkness of the night, a group of noble generals dressed in brocade entered a large tent in the chaotic camp. They were the princes with strong military strength who had been in Zhe Tian Palace during the day. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, Lu Xiu, and the others were among them. Chapter 933. Servants, serve the wine. This was Zhuang Yan's main tent, so naturally, he was the host. Zhuang Yan had close to 60,000 soldiers under his command. He had brought almost all the soldiers he could gather from the entire Swift White province. As the most powerful feudal lord, he seemed to have other plans. Su Changjing, Lu Xiu, and the others sat down one after another. They looked at each other, not knowing why Zhuang Yan had called them here. The song and dance can begin now, Zhuang Yan said lightly. Inside the barracks, slender women in black cloaks walked in one by one. Under the illumination of the candlelight, their beautiful faces were extremely moving. What was unimaginable was that there were actually dozens of high-quality beauties hidden within the army. However, it seemed that these beauties were merely Zhuang Yan's exclusive pets. The dancers raised their hands and untied the cloaks in front of their chests. When the cloaks fell to the ground, everyone's eyes lit up. These dancers only wore close-fitting silk dresses, which outlined their graceful figures very enchanting. Their bodies swayed gently, and it was extremely beautiful. Everyone, how are the beauties of my Swift White province? Zhuang Yan suddenly asked. Su Changjing was startled, then he smiled and said, very good. The Swift White province is indeed a good place to nurture such stunning beauties. Zhuang Yan raised his cup and laughed, come, let's drink to the brim first. No one dared to disrespect Zhuang Yan. Everyone raised their cups. After 3 rounds of wine, Zhuang Yan waved his hand. Immediately, the dancers took their seats. Almost every feudal lord had a dancer beside him. Zhuang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, there's wine for today. Please don't let this good time go to waste. Ha ha ha. Bailing City's prefect Lu Xiu frowned and said, Lord Zhuang Yan, I wonder why you called us here? Zhuang Yan said, it's nothing important. I just wanted to invite all of you here for a banquet. Why, Prefect Lu, do you think I have something on my mind? Ha 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 ha. Lu Xiu cupped his fists, no, please don't think too much. No, I really do have something on my mind. Zhuang Yan's voice suddenly became stern. Immediately, all the vassals looked over. Zhuang Yan seemed to be a bit drunk as he stood up shakily. Holding a wine cup in his hand, he said, we are all subjects of the empire, and we have worked hard for the sake of protecting the emperor. Today, the forces gathered by all of you here are more than 10,000 men. We have dragged out an ignoble existence in our respective cities, seized cities from the enemy, and slaughtered their soldiers. However, to this day, we have not received any rewards. Why is it that Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others have been promoted to nobility and given more contributions? Why? It's only because they are the direct subordinates of Qin Emperor Lin Muyu. I, Zhuang Yan, feel sorry for everyone here. Su Changjing remained silent. Lu Xiu, on the other hand, put down his wine cup with an indignant look on his face and said, that's right, they look down on our background and think that we are just local tyrants. The words of Zhe Tian Palace have never been in our hands. Her Highness, the Empress, has only put people like Shen Yifan, Su Yu, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing in important positions. She has nepotism, and vassals from other places like us will never have a chance. That's right. A burly man stood up. He was the prefectural governor of Tianshu province, and his name was Zhou Heng. He had gathered more than 20,000 soldiers. At this moment, his face was flushed red, and he said angrily, we also want to serve the empire, but why are we always inferior to others? Zhuang Yan smiled faintly and said, that's right, that's the reason. If we hand over our military power, I'm afraid that we will soon become fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone, we have to think about our future and prospects. Su Changjing narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile, then, what exactly do you think, Sir Zhuang Yan? Zhuang Yan laughed heartily and suddenly threw his wine cup to the ground. The world should be governed by the people of the world. Why should one person have the final say? Everyone was shocked. Zhuang Yan's words were no different from treason. Lu Xiu frowned and said, Sir Zhuang Yan, please be careful with your words. Her Highness is benevolent and has never done anything that would harm the common people. If your words are heard by the 3 dukes or Princess Shi, I'm afraid you will have to bear the consequences. Why? Are you afraid, Sir Lu? Zhuang Yan smiled and pointed at the door. The door is over there. If Sir Lu is afraid, please leave. I, Zhuang Yan, do not keep cowards in my tent. Lu Shiyu gritted his teeth. When he came in, he saw many guards outside the tent. If he really went out, he might not have the chance to return to his tent. Zhuang Yan was a ruthless person, and there was nothing he couldn't do. I'm not afraid, I'm just worried, Lu Shiyu said. Don't worry. As long as the feudal vassals stick together, what can they do? Zhuang Yan said. Yes. Yes. Everyone agreed in unison. Su Changjing said, then what does Sir Zhuang Yan want? Zhuang Yan said, doesn't Her Highness want 20% of our military strength? Then give it to her. After everyone returns to the camp, pick out the old, weak, and sick in the army and hand them over to the Ministry of War. These old and weak people were originally used to make up the numbers, so it doesn't matter if we give it to them. In addition, please gather your encampments and surround the Swift White Province's feudal army. Don't let them break through one by one. Yes, that makes sense. Zhuang Yan squinted his eyes and said, in addition, we have to submit a joint memorial. Oh, what memorial? Su Changjing was stunned. Power reduction. For the stability of the people of the empire, power must be reduced. Whose power is reduced? The 3 dukes, 4 dukes, and 5 marquises. Everyone fell silent. The 3 dukes, 4 dukes, and 5 marquises were all important officials of the empire. Other than Yao Yuan, the Marquis of the Tranquil Sea, and Luo Xian, the Duke of the North, the rest had made great contributions to the empire. It wouldn't be easy to reduce their power. Zhuang Yan seemed to have seen through everyone's doubts. He smiled and said, I know that everyone thinks this is difficult, but it's actually not that difficult. We only need to submit a request. The decision can only be made by Her Highness. All we need to do is to put on a show. Only by reducing the power of the 3 dukes will we have a chance, right? Yes. Everyone nodded in unison. Lu Shiyu frowned and said, if we were to submit a memorial like this, I'm afraid it would be no different from a rebellion. After all, Her Highness the Empress is a god-state cultivator. In addition to Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and the others, how are we mortals going to face their might? Therefore, we need someone who can make Her Highness fear and control Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing at the same time, Zhou Heng said with a smile. Oh. Zhuang Yan was stunned. There is such a person in this world? Who is Lord Zhou Heng? If I can invite this person, he will definitely be able to turn the situation around. Who is it? Qing, allow me to keep you in suspense. Ha ha ha, just wait and see. Zhou Heng said proudly, my Heaven's Pivot province is rich in resources and has many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It will definitely broaden your horizons. 7 days later, at the barracks of the Ministry of War. Early in the morning, a group of cavalrymen flew into the barracks. It was Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. They had brought a group of guards to select new soldiers. This was a promise that Qin Yin had made to them. She had allowed the Longdan army camp and the Imperial Army to have priority in recruiting new soldiers. The vassals outside the city had contributed 20% of their troops, which was a total of 130,000 soldiers. It should be enough. However, when Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing entered the drill ground, their faces turned ashen. The drill ground was densely packed with new soldiers, but their clothes were disheveled. Almost all of them were veterans, and many of them were crippled. They couldn't even lift a spear. What's going on? Wei Chou frowned. Their average age is enough to be my father's. Feng Jixing sneered. I knew it. These vassals won't be so kind as to hand over their elite troops. They are just putting up a front. We should have killed them back at Zetian Palace. If you kill them, Xiao Yin will have a hard time as the empress. Lin Muyu curled her lips. Then what do you think we should do? Feng Jixing was getting impatient. It seems that the vassals have already begun to form an alliance. They started moving their camps a few days ago. Now, all of them are in the southern area of Lanyan City. There are a total of 600,000 to 700,000 men and horses. The amount of rations supplied to them every day is not a small amount. If this goes on, I'm afraid that Lanyan City will be emptied by them in less than half a year. What should we do? Feng Jixing asked. We can't always be so passive and helpless, right? We don't have any soldiers now, and we can't use force against them. After all, they are all people of the empire. If we use force, I'm afraid that we will lose the support of the people. Lin Muyu pondered. How about this? Think of a way to capture the leader first. Find an opportunity to kill all the feudal lords, and their troops will naturally belong to us. What kind of opportunity? A banquet. Brother Feng, you can host a banquet in your own residence to entertain the feudal lords. Feng Jixing rolled his eyes. Are you kidding me? Where would I get a residence? It's not like you don't know that I've been freeloading in the Imperial Army's barracks ever since I returned to Lanyan City. However, it's better to host a banquet in your residence. Lin Muyu glared at him. Do you think I have a residence? Have you forgotten that I've been freeloading at Xiao Yin's place for 7 or 8 days? Then what should we do? Let Duke Fan host? The Divine Marquis's residence is still very big. That's good too. We'll discuss it with Duke Fan. Okay. Xing Yifan, who was drinking his morning tea, suddenly sneezed. What's wrong, father? Zheng Fang asked. Xing Yifan rubbed his nose and said, I have a feeling that something bad is coming. Oh, what could it be? A guard's voice came from outside the door. Duke Fan, Prince Qin, Prince Xian, and Duke Wei are here. Sure enough, something bad is coming. Xing Yifan squinted his eyes and smiled. These people are definitely not good. Zheng Fang. 10 minutes later, Xing Yifan's face was ashen after listening to Lin Muyu's words. Duke Fan, please make a decision with benevolence and justice. Lin Muyu said, Brother Feng and I don't have a decent residence in Lanyan City. Your Divine Marquis's residence is so spacious. Moreover, with your reputation, the feudal lords will definitely come. Xing Yifan took a deep breath. When will the banquet be held? 3 days later. Then, all right. Xing Yifan raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. Does Her Highness know about this? I don't know. The two of you are really daring. Duke Fan is too kind. Chapter 934. However, before Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu had even stepped out of the door, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. A guard from the Divine Marquis residence said respectfully, Duke Fan, Sir Zhuang Yan has sent someone to deliver an invitation. He said that there will be a banquet at the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon, and Duke Fan is invited. The Drunken Immortal restaurant? Xing Yifan frowned and said, call him in. Yes. The person sent by Zhuang Yan did not look like a soldier, but more like a businessman. He was fat and had a mustache. When he saw Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, he immediately smiled and said, so your highnesses are here too, that's even better. Both of you are also invited to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon. This is Sir Zhuang Yan's invitation. He took out 4 invitation cards at once. Not only were Xing Yifan, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing invited, even Wei Chou was included. What is Sir Zhuang Yan planning to do? Lin Muyu asked. The messenger shook his head and said, this lowly one is just a messenger. As for the details, this lowly one doesn't know. However, Lord Zhuang Yan said that tomorrow at noon, there will be an earth-shattering announcement at the Drunken Immortal Inn. I hope that the 2 princes, Duke Fan, and Minister Wei will not miss it. Who else did he invite? Feng Jixing asked. The 3 highnesses, the 3 dukes and many marquises have been invited. In addition, the Ministry of War, Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Justice, Divine Temple and Elixir Department of Lanyan City have also been invited. There are about 100 people in total. Alright, that's all. You can go now. Tell Zhuang Yan that we will be there on time tomorrow. Yes, then I'll take my leave. After the messenger left, the people in the living room frowned. His movements are quite fast. We didn't even have time to make a move before he made the first move, Lin Muyu said lightly. Tomorrow's lunch at the Drunken Immortal restaurant won't be that delicious. Zheng Yifan nodded. A few days ago, I heard that Zhuang Yan had also invited the various feudal princes to a banquet. Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, Zhou Heng, Zhao Xinpei, Yang Zhong, and the other feudal princes were all present. The imperial army only has 100,000 troops, but the hundreds of feudal princes have 6 or 7 times more troops than us. They can already be considered to have the power to decide life and death. As he spoke, Zheng Yifan sat down and sighed. Originally, we could enjoy peace after defeating the celestial pole continent, but I didn't expect that the empire's chaos had only just begun. Feng Jixing said, Zhuang Yan and the others don't have good intentions. In my opinion, we should cut the Gordian knot and kill the feudal prince's leaders, ending all troubles once and for all. Your Highness Prince Xian, times have changed. It's no longer the time for you to kill hundreds of generals in the 7 seas. Back then, the main forces of the Empire's army still existed and Tang Lan was still around, so they still had some reservations. But now, the chaos in the feudal vassal states' armies is no longer something that people like Tang Lu can compare to. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, and Lu Xiu. Which one of them isn't a sly old fox? If we really kill them with our status as Divine Realm experts, their subordinates will also lead their armies to attack Lanyan City. Lin Muyu said, we'll talk about it after we go to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon. Emicham, Feng Jixing nodded. Lin Muyu then looked at Wei Chou and said, deploy 2,000 people from the Longdan army camp to guard the surroundings of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If anything really goes wrong, we'd rather kill the innocent than let them off. Don't leave any feudal princes alive. Wei Chou cupped his fists. Yes, I understand. Feng Jixing muttered, this matter. Should we tell Her Highness Yin and Princess Shi? The 2 of them have just been freed from the war. It's better not to tell them. We'll make the decision ourselves. I think Xiao Yin and Xiao Shi won't blame us. All right. The next day, at noon, there were no other customers in the Drunken Immortal restaurant on Tongtian Street. The entire place was under martial law by the guards of the feudal princes' armies. However, the streets outside the Drunken Immortal restaurant were tightly guarded by the armored cavalry of the Longdan army camp. If there were any disturbances, the hundreds of guards of the feudal princes' armies naturally wouldn't be a match for the battle-hardened elites of the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing arrived at the Drunken Immortal restaurant together. When the 2 of them entered, they discovered that Qin Yan, Su Yu, and Jin Yifan were already there. The huge Drunken Immortal restaurant had already been booked by Zhuang Yan today. There was no one else. All the guests were important ministers of the imperial court. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice all came forward to pay their respects. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing each nodded their heads in return. In reality, with their status, there was no need for them to do so. Not long after, Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, and the rest walked out from inside. Zhuang Yan laughed heartily and knelt down, saying, this general pays his respects to the 3 highnesses. It is the honor of us feudal princes that the 3 highnesses are willing to give us face. Lord Zhuang need not be so courteous. Rise, Lin Muyu said. Then, everyone, please take your seats. Zhuang Yan nodded his head with a smile. He led Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, and the rest straight to a large table in the center. The guests at this table were all first rank. Aside from the 3 princes and 3 dukes, there were also the Minister of War, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Revenue, and so on. Every single one of them was a heavyweight who could make Lanyan City tremble with a stomp of their feet. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing remained silent. There was no such thing as a good banquet. Today was destined to be a bad day. Delicious delicacies quickly filled the table, and the aroma of wine filled the air. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing had been away from home for many years, so they never had the chance to taste the delicacies of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Today, they couldn't help but be tempted, but they still had to endure it. After all, something big was definitely going to happen today. I wonder why Lord Zhuang has set up a banquet to entertain us today. Zhuang Yifan squinted his eyes and asked with a smile. Zhuang Yan smiled slightly and said, "Everyone here is the cornerstone of the empire. The 3 princes rule the world, the 4 dukes rule the world, and the 5 dukes guard the 4 directions. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Revenue provide the most solid logistical support for the empire's army. Only by working together can we drive away the powerful enemy. Compared to everyone here, we feudal princes who recruit our own troops simply have no qualifications to speak of. However, the troops in our hands only recognize our faces, so, today, the purpose of this Zhuang hosting this banquet is to familiarize ourselves with each other, so that we can work together in the future and make preparations for our loyalty to the empire." His loyal and courageous appearance made it hard for anyone to doubt him. Lin Muyu's face was expressionless. After so many years, she could tell at a glance that Zhuang Yan was only a scheming villain. He was still thousands of miles away from being a loyal official. Thus, Lin Muyu said, "When will the banquet start?" "I'm hungry." "Ha, Your Highness Prince Qin, please wait a moment." Zhuang Yan laughed and said, "Today, other than everyone here, this general has also invited a highly respected elder of the empire's royal family. With him here, the empire can truly be at peace for a long time." "Oh." Lin Muyu was a little displeased and said, "Who is this person? How can he have such a big tone?" "We found this person in Heaven's Pivot Province. He has already concealed his identity for many years, escaping from Fairy Lake to live in the northeast of Heaven's Pivot Province, living like a hunter. I think Your Highness Prince Zhong should be quite familiar with him." Zhuang Yan looked deeply at Qin Yan. Qin Yan was slightly stunned. What am I familiar with? Call him over first." "All right." Zhuang Yan clapped his hands and said, "Men, invite His Highness in." Immediately, the curtains at the back of the hall were pulled open. An old man with grizzled hair and beard walked over under the support of 2 guards. His spirit was still considered hale and hearty, but his appearance was incomparably aged. Everyone stared dumbfounded with their mouths agape, feeling that he was somewhat familiar. Even Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were dumbfounded. They seemed to have seen this person before somewhere, but they could not quite remember. Among the crowd, only Qin Yan slowly stood up and walked over in a daze, saying in a trembling voice, "Royal Father, is that you?" "Royal Father." The arrival was precisely Prince Ji Ning, Qin Quan. Qin Jin, Qin Yi's younger brother. Qin Quan's old tears flowed down, his palm trembling as he supported Qin Yan's arm. "Ah Yan. My Ah Yan has grown up. Father misses you and your brother every day. Today, I can finally see you guys." Qin Yan lost his voice and cried bitterly, "Royal Father, for so many years, we already thought that you were already dead. Why would you appear here today?" Qin Shao said, "Back then, second brother did not listen to my advice and killed royal brother, fratricidal. But he did not want to kill me. He just sent someone to a faraway place on a horse alone. He said before that as long as I concealed my identity, he would not pursue it. Otherwise, he would definitely send people to hunt me down. For so many years, I've always been hiding deep in the mountains without anyone knowing." "Ah Yan, your brother, Qin Yan's tears flowed. "My brother, he already died for the country during the Lanyan City rebellion 11 years ago." "My Ah Lei," Qin Quan's entire body trembled. Only when he got this news from Qin Yan's mouth did he truly feel the pain of losing a loved one. Zhuang Yan walked forward and supported Qin Quan, saying, "Your Highness, please take a seat. Commander Qin Lei sacrificed his life for the country. He is the pride of the empire. You should be happy for him." Qin Shao nodded and took a seat. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing stood up at the same time and said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Highness Prince Yuning." "I know you too." Qin Quan said faintly, "You are Lin Muyu, royal brother's adopted son, and you are Feng Jixing, the commander of the imperial army." "That's right. You two are already dukes now." Qin Quan looked at their cloaks and naturally knew their identities. Su'er said, "Your Highness Prince Yuning, you has been conferred the title of Qin King, Feng Jixing has been conferred the title of Xian King, and your son Qin Yan has been conferred the title of Zhong King." For so many years, it was the three of them who had been ruling the world of Great Qin. I know all of it," Feng Jixing smiled. "Your Highness Prince Yuning is Her Highness Empress's uncle. It's great that you can return safe and sound. The Empire has gained another capable official, it's a blessing. Why don't Your Highness be escorted by us to Zetian Palace to see Her Highness Empress?" Qin Quan was startled and didn't say anything. Instead, Zhuang Yan smiled, "Your Highness Prince Yuning must be tired from the journey. Don't rush to see Her Highness Empress for now. Why don't you wait for the morning court meeting?" Feng Jixing said coldly, "Since when did a small governor of Xiang City like you have the right to decide Prince Yuning's matters?" His words were filled with murderous intent, and Zhuang Yan couldn't help but turn pale. Lin Muyu quickly pressed her hand on Feng Jixing's wrist and said, "Brother Feng, let's wait for Prince Yuning's opinion first." Qin Quan coughed violently and said, "Then, tomorrow morning. We're not in a hurry anyway. I've been traveling in the mountains for so many years, and I've heard a lot of things. I can write a memorial to Her Highness Empress." Lin Muyu nodded, okay. Feng Jixing glared at Lin Muyu, seemingly dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu's voice passed into Feng Jixing's ears like a silk thread. "I know Zhuang Yan wants to control us through Prince Yuning, but we can't act rashly. After all, we have to show respect to Prince Yuning, the Emperor's uncle, and even more so to Yan. He just learned that his father is still alive. How can we pour cold water on him now?" Feng Jixing's anger gradually subsided. He nodded and didn't say anything more. He started to eat. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.